Chapter 502. Since Divine Master He Yu had spoken, this matter was settled. All the princes looked on coldly and did not discuss this matter anymore. Ji Tianqing bowed to Divine Master He Yu and cupped his hands. Thank you, Divine Master He Yu. I will definitely defeat Long Yunxiao and enter the monarch mansion as soon as possible to become the new prince. Divine Master He Yu nodded slightly and said indifferently, You still have to wait for a month to become the new prince. Now, you are not the prince of this mansion, so you are not qualified to stay in the monarch mansion. I still have to discuss important matters with the princes. You should leave quickly. After saying that, Divine Master He Yu waved his wide sleeves and signaled Ji Tianqing to leave. Yun Yao quickly cupped her hands and said, Divine Master He Yu, I will send him out of the monarch mansion. Divine Master He Yu nodded and agreed to her request. Therefore, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao turned and left, flying towards the exit of the monarch mansion. Ji Tianqing endured his internal injuries and flapped his golden wings to fly in the sky. Yun Yao also flapped her fiery wings and followed beside him, flying side by side with him. On the way, Yun Yao looked at him with concern and said, Tianqing, don't do something as dangerous as trespassing on the monarch mansion again. Ji Tianqing nodded and said gently, Senior sister, I have not seen you since you sacrificed yourself to save me. I know you are seriously injured and almost lost your life. I am worried about you and just want to see you. Yun Yao stared at him with a complicated look in her eyes. She sighed and said, Tianqing, you're risking your life just to see me. Is it worth it? Yes. Ji Tianqing answered without hesitation. Yun Yao was silent, but a touch of gentleness flashed across her clear eyes. In front of others, she was cold and aloof, and her temperament was as cold as ice. Only in front of Ji Tianqing would her frosty aura melt and turn into soft water. Ji Tianqing said seriously, In a month's time, the emperor will choose his heavenly concubine at the Apocalypse Pagoda. Eldest senior sister. Don't worry. When that day comes, I will climb up the Apocalypse Tower and defeat Long Yunxiao in front of everyone. After I defeat him, not only will he not make things difficult for you, I can also enter the monarch mansion. Madame Yun also promised me that as long as I can enter the monarch manor, she will not stop us from meeting. Eldest senior sister, after I enter the monarch mansion, I will be able to see you every day. Ji Tianqing's tone was very solemn, and his eyes were full of confidence and expectation. Yun Yao nodded and warned, Tianqing, I believe everything you said. I believe that you will definitely defeat Long Yunxiao. However, Long Yunxiao was at the second level of the Sky Origin stage after all. He had mastered many secret skills from the royal court. His true power was not to be underestimated. You must be careful and not be careless. Ji Tianqing nodded and said, I understand, eldest senior sister. Not long after, the two of them flew above a vast grassland and arrived at the exit of the monarch mansion. On the vast grassland, there was a huge altar that was 30 meters tall. The altar was 100 meters wide, and there was a huge circular array board at the top. It was engraved with mysterious array patterns. The formation plate lit up with colorful brilliance, condensing into a colorful light gate that was 100 meters tall. It was a teleportation array and also the entrance to the monarch mansion. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao landed on the array board. Yun Yao took out the monarch's token and activated the teleportation array with a secret skill. Swoosh! The barrier in the colorful light gate disappeared and turned into a whirlpool. Yun Yao looked at Ji Tianqing and said, Tianqing, take care. Eldest senior sister. Don't worry about me. We will meet again soon. Ji Tianqing waved at Yun Yao and stepped into the teleportation array. The next moment, his figure was swallowed by the whirlpool and he left the monarch mansion. Swoosh! With a flash of colorful light, he appeared in the forest of divine steels, under the towering gate that was 100 meters tall. He looked back at the gate of the monarch mansion and then left, rushing back to the breeze courtyard in the fish dragon alley. 1 hour later, Ji Tianqing returned to the breeze courtyard. Ji Ku and Yan had already returned to the breeze courtyard. They had been sitting in the pavilion of the first courtyard, waiting for his return with worry. When Ji Tianqing crossed the gate and entered the courtyard, the two people who were waiting for him immediately saw him and hurriedly went up to greet him. Brother Tianqing, you are finally back. Senior brother Tianqing, you are finally back. I'm glad you are okay. Ji Ku and Yan came closer and saw that Ji Tianqing had suffered internal injuries. His face was a little pale, and there were still traces of blood at the corner of his mouth. Immediately, the two of them showed concern and quickly asked, "Brother Tianqing, how did you get hurt? What happened? Did the powerhouses of the monarch mansion find you? Senior brother Tianqing, are your injuries serious?" Ji Tianqing waved his hand, indicating that they did not need to worry. "My injuries are not serious. I will recover in a few days. This is not the place to talk. Let's go back first." Ji Ku and Yan were relieved and quickly followed him back to the living room of the third courtyard. After sitting down, Ji Tianqing saw that there was no one around to disturb them. Then, he explained the situation to them. "With the help of Yan Er's invisibility charm, I successfully sneaked into the monarch mansion. I happened to meet a divine master and many princes who were discussing how to deal with the demonic emperor. Furthermore, I even saw eldest senior sister. She personally sent me off." Ji Ku and Yan were excited and looked expectant. They quickly asked, "Brother Tianqing, you met the legendary divine master and many princes?" The monarch mansion summoned many princes back to Middle State City because of the demonic emperor. "Senior brother Tianqing, what is the monarch mansion's stance? Will they deal with the demonic emperor?" Ji Tianqing frowned and said regretfully, "The monarch mansion took a neutral stance in dealing with the demonic emperor. They did not express their stance but listened to the opinions of the princes first. Among the princes of the three clans, only the human clan and the demon clan supported dealing with the demonic emperor. The water clan was indifferent and looked on coldly. Before I heard the monarch mansion's stance, the invisibility charm was about to expire. Then, I was discovered by the divine master He Yu. Speaking of which, the divine master He Yu of the soul cultivation stage is really powerful. A casual palm strike from him could shatter the sky and almost take my life." Recalling divine master Black Feather's seemingly ordinary but terrifyingly powerful palm strike, Ji Tianqing still felt a lingering fear. Fortunately, the wings of Kenshin's battle robe helped him block the power of the palm strike. Otherwise, he would not have come back alive. Ji Ku and Yan were originally full of expectations, hoping that the monarch mansion would come out to deal with the demonic emperor. In that case, the demonic emperor would be eradicated quickly, and the Sky Pillar sect in the ancient star realm would be completely stable. Chapter 503. Ji Ku and Yan then asked Ji Tianqing about Yun Yao. The three of them chatted for a while before Ji Ku and Yan took their leave and returned to their residence. Ji Tianqing also prepared to return to his residence to recuperate in seclusion for a few days. However, as soon as he walked out of the living room, he saw the Beast King walking towards him. When the Beast King saw him, he quickly waved his hand and said with a smile, "Nephew Tianqing, this old man has something to talk to you about." Ji Tianqing stopped, cupped his hands to the Beast King and asked, "What is the matter, Senior Beast King?" The Beast King did not beat around the bush and went straight to the point. "Nephew will be preparing to enter the monarch mansion in the near future, so you will definitely concentrate on improving your strength and will have no time to take care of Qian Yu. It just so happens that this old man has been idle recently and has become more proficient in raising spirit beasts. If nephew doesn't mind, you might as well give Qian Yu and the flood dragon to this old man. This old man will personally train and teach them, and they will definitely grow faster. Once they become stronger, they will be of great help to you, nephew." Ji Tianqing naturally would not refuse the Beast King's kindness. He quickly cupped his hands and thanked him. "Thank you for your kindness, Senior Beast King. I will leave Qian Yu and the little black dragon in your care." After saying that, he took off the 100 treasures brocade pouch from his waist and handed it to the Beast King. Qian Yu and the little black dragon were sleeping in the 100 treasures brocade pouch, quietly cultivating. Unfortunately, they did not have sufficient cultivation resources, nor could they get the guidance of a master, so their speed of improving their strength was very fast. This was a common characteristic of all spirit beasts. Their growth speed was very slow. They often needed to spend hundreds of years to become Yuan Dan stage great monsters or heavenly origin stage monster kings. After the Beast King received the 100 treasures brocade pouch, he told Ji Tianqing, "Nephew, you can cultivate at ease. This old man will not disturb you. If you need anything, just tell White Ape to do it. He will definitely do it well. If nephew is worried about Qian Yu and the little black dragon, you can also visit them often to check on their progress." Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. "Then I'll have to trouble Senior." Junior will be eternally grateful. The two exchanged some pleasantries before the Beast King left with 100 treasures brocade pouch. Ji Tianxing also returned to his residence and went into seclusion to recuperate. The Beast King had prepared a separate courtyard for him, Ji Ku, and Yen, It was called Jade Pure Court. This clear jade garden was the most elegant and unique courtyard in the Clear Breeze Courtyard, with the most abundant spiritual qi of heaven and earth. Ji Tianxing's room was not only elegant and comfortable, it was also equipped with a secret training room and a pill room. Both the secret room and the pill room were equipped with heaven origin grade formations, which could provide an endless supply of heaven and earth spiritual qi. Cultivating in the clear jade garden was faster than cultivating in the sky pillar sect. Ji Tianxing sat cross-legged in the secret chamber, absorbing the spiritual energy in the spirit gathering array. Strands of 5-colored spiritual energy flowed into his body like a small stream flowing into a large river. Relying on the powerful self-healing ability of the Kenshin bloodline, he quickly healed his internal injuries and replenished the true essence he had consumed. Time passed quietly, and in the blink of an eye, 5 days had passed. Early in the morning, Ji Tianxing's injuries had healed, so he ended his seclusion and left the secret chamber. He returned to his room and brewed a pot of spiritual tea, preparing to taste the spiritual tea personally cultivated by the Beast King. At this time, the sound of muffled footsteps came from outside the courtyard. He probed with his spiritual sense and saw White Ape quickly walking into the courtyard, holding a silver-edged invitation in his hand. A moment later, White Ape came to his room and knocked on the door. Ji Tianxing got up and opened the door, asking, "White Ape, why are you looking for me?" White Ape handed the invitation to him and said solemnly, "Tianxing, a messenger came to see you just now. He brought this invitation and said that he wanted to give it to Miss Ji Ku." An invitation? Ji Tianxing took the luxurious and dazzling invitation and carefully observed it. The invitation was made of golden paper and wrapped with silver thread at the edges. It was also inlaid with a few gems that flickered with light. Mysterious array patterns were engraved on the invitation, which contained a powerful array power. It looked extremely exquisite and noble. Just this invitation alone was worth at least 10 spirit stones. Ji Tianxing frowned in confusion and asked, "Someone who can afford this kind of invitation must have an extraordinary background. White Ape, did you ask who the messenger was delivering the letter for?" White Ape answered truthfully, "I've already asked. The messenger said that he was a guard under Imperial Prince Kunwu." Imperial Prince Kunwu? Ji Tianxing frowned, his eyes full of doubts and puzzlement. Why would Kunwu send someone to deliver an invitation to Cuckoo? The two of them have nothing to do with each other. White Ape naturally couldn't answer this question. He cupped his hands at Ji Tianxing and after bidding farewell, he turned around and left. Ji Tianxing held the golden jade invitation and frowned for a moment before he went to the next room to find Ji Ku. Ji Ku was cultivating when she heard the knock on the door. She quickly stopped and opened the door to welcome Ji Tianxing in. "Brother Tianxing, why are you looking for me?" Ji Tianxing handed the invitation to her and explained, "Imperial Prince Kunwu's guard just sent this invitation to you." Imperial Prince Kunwu? Was it that so-called demon prince? He sent me an invitation? Ji Ku was stunned and thought that she had misheard. After she came back to her senses, she frowned in confusion. "I don't know this guy. Why would he send me an invitation? We only saw his guard of honor on the street that day. Before that, I've never heard of this person." Ji Tianxing nodded. "This is indeed unbelievable. Open the invitation and take a look first." Ji Ku did as she was told. She opened the invitation and read it carefully. After reading the contents of the invitation, her expression became more and more astonished. She said suspiciously, "Brother Tianxing, that Imperial Prince Kunwu actually invited me to Xingyu Villa as a guest." Ji Tianxing frowned. "Invited you to Xingyu Villa as a guest? What is this Imperial Prince Kunwu trying to do?" Ji Ku was also confused and couldn't make sense of it. She frowned and thought for a moment. Then she pursed her lips and said, "Brother Tianxing, we don't know that Kunwu at all. Regardless of whether he sent the wrong invitation or if he has some scheme or intention, we don't need to pay attention to him." Ji Tianxing frowned and thought for a moment. Then he said in a solemn tone, "Since Kunwu's guard was able to find Qingfeng Courtyard, he must have followed you or secretly investigated you. Since he specifically asked for the invitation to be given to you, There must be a reason behind it. No matter what, let's go to Xingyu Villa and see what he's trying to do. Jika didn't want to go. Whether Kunwu was a demon prince or the imperial prince of the monarch residence, it had nothing to do with her. Chapter 504. Ji Tianqing found White Ape and asked him about the location of Star Moon Manor. White Ape thought for a moment and told him that Star Moon Manor was outside Zhongzhou City, on Star Moon Mountain in the western suburbs. It was said that Star Moon Manor was a magnificent, palace-like manor. It was the temporary residence of a distinguished person. The moment Ji Tianqing heard this, he understood that the so-called honorable person was most likely referring to Emperor Kunwu. After he and Ji Ku were ready, they left Qingfeng Courtyard and rushed to the western city gate. It was the time when the sun rose, so there were few people on the streets. Ji Tianqing held Jika's hand and flapped his golden wings, flying in the air as fast as light. About an hour later, they passed through the western city gate and left Zhongzhou City. The western suburbs outside the city were covered with rolling mountain ranges, lush forests, and lofty mountains. 200 miles away from the western city gate, there was a crescent-shaped mountain range called Star Moon Mountain. Ji Tianqing took only an hour to arrive at Star Moon Mountain with Ji Ku. The two of them looked down at the peak of Star Moon Mountain from the sky. Soon, they found the magnificent Star Moon Manor hidden in the forest. Star Moon Manor was built on the peak of a mountain that was thousands of feet high and covered an area of 10 miles. The entire manor was very spacious and imposing. There were many majestic and dignified palaces and rows of exquisite and elegant houses within the manor. There were also several gardens, 2 clear lakes, and beautiful pavilions and other buildings in the manor. Ji Tianqing could see that the architectural style of Star Moon Manor was different from that of the human tribe's palaces. It had a strong foreign style. Moreover, the entire manor was protected by the Tianyuan Formation, and there were countless guards and maids in the manor. Star Moon Manor was not only luxurious but also heavily guarded. After seeing the layout of Star Moon Manor, Ji Tianqing descended from the sky with Ji Ku and landed outside the main gate of Star Moon Manor. The gate of the manor, which was nearly 100 meters tall, was like the gate of a majestic city. It was guarded by dozens of muscular demon guards. Ji Tianqing led Ji Ku to the entrance calmly. A guard captain hurriedly walked out and stopped the two of them in a dignified manner. Ji Tianqing didn't say much and took out the golden invitation card. After the guard captain saw the invitation, he immediately bowed respectfully to the two of them. "So it's your highness, esteemed guest. Please forgive me if I was rude just now. Please follow me. His highness has been waiting in the heart-nourishing lake for a long time." After saying that, the guard captain personally led the way for the two of them and brought them into the Star Moon Villa. Under the lead of the guard captain, Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku passed through 2 layers of palaces and courtyards. They crossed several paths and corridors before entering an elegant garden. In the huge garden, there was a mirror-like lake. All kinds of spirit willows and flowers were planted around the lake. In the middle of the sparkling lake, there was an octagonal pavilion with cornices that was about 10 feet tall. Its design was extremely exquisite and unique. There were no pillars at the bottom of the pavilion, but it floated above the lake and was as stable as a huge mountain. The pavilion was surrounded by clear lake water. There was no covered bridge connecting the shore. No matter who wanted to enter the pavilion, they had to fly in the air or use qinggong to step across the lake. Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku came to the shore of the lake and saw a stone table and a few stone stools in the exquisite and elegant pavilion. A tall and handsome demon youth wearing a white fox fur coat was sitting in front of the stone table. His right arm was placed on the stone table and his palm was supporting his handsome and resolute face. His left hand was holding a cup of spirit tea and he was quietly sipping it. This person exuded an unruly, noble, and powerful aura. He was obviously Prince Kunwu. In addition, there were 2 charming demon maids in the pavilion. One of them was in charge of pouring tea, while the other was sitting at the edge of the pavilion, waving her slender hands and playing a guqin. The melodious sound of the guqin kept coming from the pavilion, making people feel refreshed and relaxed. The captain of the guards bowed to Prince Kunwu in the pavilion and reported loudly, "Your Highness, the honored guests are here." Prince Kunwu came back to his senses and turned to look at Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku by the shore of the lake. "Let them in." After saying this, he waved his hand and shot out a light blue true essence light beam, pouring it into the sparkling lake. Dense mist immediately rose from the surface of the lake and condensed into ice in the blink of an eye, forming a 10-meter-long covered bridge. The crystal-clear ice-covered bridge spanned across the 10-meter-wide lake. One end was connected to the pavilion, and the other end extended to Ji Tianqing and Ji Ke's feet. Such a mysterious and extraordinary technique with spiritual qi was not something an ordinary Heaven's Prime cultivator could perform. At least, an ordinary Heaven's Prime cultivator could not do it as easily as Prince Kunwu, who could form a huge ice bridge with a flick of his finger. However, Ji Tianqing did not step onto the ice bridge. He flapped his golden wings and flew across the lake with Ji Ke, as fast as a beam of light, and landed in the pavilion. Seeing this, Prince Kunwu could not help but raise his eyebrows. Of course, he knew that the other party did not seem to appreciate his kindness and did not have a good impression of him. However, he did not take it to heart. "Please have a seat." Kunwu sat on the stone bench and did not get up. His left hand was still holding the teacup as he greeted them calmly. As he spoke, he sized up Ji Tianqing and Ji Ke calmly. When he saw Ji Tianqing's face clearly, he frowned and said in surprise, "You are that Ji Tianqing who trespassed into the emperor's residence? Haha, I didn't expect us to meet again." Ji Tianqing looked at him indifferently and said, "I am Xueqi's elder brother. You invited her to Star Moon Village, so I naturally have to accompany her." Kunwu raised his eyebrows and smiled playfully. "Fate is so clever. I didn't expect you to have such a relationship." Then, he ordered the demon clan maid behind him, "Pour tea for the two guests." The demon clan maid was very clever and immediately served Ji Tianqing and Ji Ke 2 cups of spiritual tea. Ji Ke did not appreciate it and said to Kunwu expressionlessly, "There is no need for tea. I have never met you before. Why did you invite me to Star Moon Village? What is it? What is it? Just say it." Kunwu looked at her deeply and said with a smile, "Ji Ke, although we do not know each other, there is no enmity between us. I have no ill intentions. This monarch invited you to Star Moon Manor to taste the tea, look at the scenery, and chat a little. That's all." Ji Ke frowned and wanted to say something. However, Ji Tianqing revealed a playful smile and nodded. "All right, since Prince Kunwu wants to drink tea and chat, we will naturally keep you company." Chapter 505. The pavilion quieted down. Only the elegant and soothing sound of the zither lingered in everyone's ears. Ji Tianqing tasted a few mouthfuls of the spirit tea. He felt that after the tea entered his mouth, its fragrance overflowed and the taste was wonderful. After the tea entered his throat, it turned into rolling spirit energy that surged into his body. Immediately, his true essence surged even more, and his spirit was also refreshed. Prince Kunwu's spirit tea is indeed extraordinary. It can be said to be the best. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and praised. Ji Ke didn't want to taste any tea. He just sat quietly and waited for Kunwu to start talking. However, when she smelled the fragrance of the spirit tea and heard Ji Tianqing's evaluation, she couldn't help but pick up the teacup and take a small sip. As soon as she started tasting the tea, she was attracted by the miraculous effects of the spirit tea and couldn't stop. Seeing this, Kunwu smiled slightly and said proudly, "This is the best spirit tea from my clan's Spirit Mountain. If the two of you like it, you can taste it to your heart's content." Ji Tianqing put down the teacup and said seriously, "The spirit tea has been tasted. Can Prince Kunwu talk about business now?" Kunwu nodded slightly and stared at him. He asked seriously, "Ji Tianqing, do you believe in fate?" Ji Tianqing couldn't help but frown and asked, "What do you mean?" Kunwu smiled and said in a sincere tone, "You might not believe me when I tell you about this. A few days ago, on the day I returned to the monarch mansion, I saw Ji Ke in the crowd when I passed by the street. I don't know why, but I always felt that I knew her and that there was a wonderful fate between us." Hearing this, Ji Tianqing and Ji Ke both frowned and looked at him, quietly waiting for him to continue. They didn't know what he wanted to do. Kunwu continued, "After that, I thought about it for 2 days. My mind has been haunted by this matter. My heart was restless, which naturally affected my martial arts cultivation. I had to untie this knot in my heart. Thus, this monarch ordered people to secretly investigate Ji Ke's name and residence. Only then did this monarch send her an invitation, wanting to meet her." Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and asked, "We've already made the appointment and you've seen the person. What do you want to do?" Kunwu waved his hand and said, "Ji Tianqing, you don't have to take it to heart. I just want to ask her a few questions." Then he looked at Ji Ke and asked, Miss Jiku, may I ask where you are from and where you live? Jiku didn't understand what he was up to and could only answer truthfully, I'm from the Qingyun Kingdom of the Tianjin region. Kuan Wu nodded and asked, how many people do you have in your family? Who are his parents? Jiku's gaze turned playful as a teasing smile appeared on his lips. He replied, my family is too big. There are at least 3,000 to 5,000 people. Huh. Kuan Wu was stunned and didn't know whether to laugh or cry at her answer. Ji Tianxing chuckled and explained, Prince Kuan Wu, Kuka's background isn't a secret. If you send people to investigate, you'll naturally find out. I'll tell you directly. Kuku is the princess of the Qingyun Kingdom's royal family. Oh, I see. Kuan Wu was enlightened and revealed a smile. Next, Kuan Wu asked Jiku a few more questions and indirectly asked about her family background. Jiku wasn't scheming and he was magnanimous and innocent. He didn't have anything to hide, so he answered truthfully. An hour later, Kuan Wu had asked everything that she could ask, so the conversation ended here. Ji Tianxing and Jiku got up and bid farewell. Prince Kuan Wu, if there's nothing else, we'll take our leave. Kuan Wu quickly got up and sent them off. He cupped his hands and said, thank you, Miss Jiku, for clearing my doubts. If fate allows, we'll meet again. Ji Tianxing, you're an interesting guy. I hope you can pass the assessment next month and become the new emperor. I'll be counting on your auspicious words. Ji Tianxing cupped his hands and flew across the lake with Jiku. They left the heart-nourishing lake. The captain of the guards stayed by the lakeside and led the way back to where they came from. Kuan Wu stood in the pavilion in the middle of the lake and watched Ji Tianxing and Jiku's figures leave. A playful smile appeared on his face. Whether it's true or not, we'll know soon enough. He muttered to himself and turned to walk out of the pavilion. He stepped into the air and left the heart-nourishing lake. After Ji Tianxing left the Star Moon village with Jiku, they flew across the sky and returned to Zhongzhou City. Jiku looked back at the Star Moon village and couldn't help but ask in confusion, Brother Tianxing, that guy Kuan Wu invited us here just to have a cup of tea and ask about my background. Why did he investigate me? What is he trying to do? Ji Tianxing was also confused. He shook his head and said, he's a demon prince and also an emperor's son. Logically speaking, it's impossible for him to have anything to do with you. However, he must have other intentions for spending so much effort to invite you to meet him. Unfortunately, I can't see through him and can't guess his intentions. Jiku frowned and curled her lips. Forget it. Who cares what his intentions are? We'll just ignore him in the future. Okay. Ji Tianxing nodded and didn't say anything else. Soon, 45 minutes passed and the two of them were far away from the Star Moon Mountain. Jiku hugged Ji Tianxing's arm and looked down at the mountains and rivers below. Suddenly, she felt a sharp pain in her abdomen, causing her body to tremble and her face to turn pale. She endured the pain and was about to circulate her energy to investigate the situation. At this moment, it was as if a ball of fire had ignited in her abdomen. It quickly spread and rushed into her limbs and bones. In the blink of an eye, her entire body became scalding hot and bean-sized beads of sweat appeared on her forehead. The intense pain assaulted her like waves and she couldn't hold on any longer. She let out a painful groan. Brother Tianxing, I feel terrible. Ji Tianxing also noticed that Jiku's situation wasn't good. Seeing that her entire body was red and her arms and cheeks were scalding hot, he quickly landed on a mountain peak. After Jiku's feet touched the ground, she couldn't stand steadily and fell onto the grass. She hugged her head with both hands and groaned in pain. She was actually rolling on the ground in pain. My head. It's going to split open. It hurts. Brother Tianxing, I'm in so much pain. Seeing Jiku in so much pain, Ji Tianxing was instantly filled with anxiety. Kuku, what's wrong? Why did you suddenly become like this? As he spoke, Ji Tianxing quickly held Jiku's hand and used his spiritual sense to investigate the situation in her body. Soon, he found that there was an extremely violent and strange energy in Jiku's body. It was rampaging and spreading. Not only that, even her head was filled with that violent energy and her mind was in a mess. Ji Tianxing quickly used his true essence and injected it into Jiku's body. He wanted to help her suppress that strange energy and reduce her pain. Chapter 506. Xueqi suffered enormous pain and torment, rolling over and over on the grass as she constantly emitted painful moans. Ji Tianqing was filled with anxiety and worry, yet he was unable to help her alleviate her pain. He pondered for a moment and immediately realized where the problem lay. Xueqi was fine this morning, but she became like this after making a trip to Star Moon Villa. She drank a cup of spirit tea in Star Moon Villa. There must be something wrong with that cup of spirit tea. When he thought up to here, he was instantly filled with rage, and he cursed in an angry tone. Damnable Kuan Wu, he actually poisoned the spirit tea? Xueqi has no enmity with him, yet he actually did such a despicable and shameless thing as a demon prince. Bastard! I'll go look for him right now. In his rage, Ji Tianqing instinctively wanted to return to Star Moon Villa to settle the score with Kuan Wu. However, Ji's condition became worse and worse, and her consciousness became more and more muddled. After a short moment, she stopped struggling and moaning, and actually fell into a coma. After she released her hands that were hugging her head, Ji Tianqing noticed that there were actually 2 bulges protruding from the thick and beautiful hair on top of her head. The 2 sarcoma-like bulges grew on both sides of the top of her head, one on the left and one on the right, and they were extremely symmetrical in shape and size. The bulges were still constantly moving, as if something was about to drill out from within. Why is it like this? Ji Tianqing was filled with astonishment, and he used his spirit sense to investigate, yet he was unable to find any clues or reason. Helpless, he could only utilize his true essence to protect Ji's heart meridian and mind, so as to prevent her from encountering any mishap and losing her life. As for the strange energy in her body, he was powerless to do anything about it. At the same time, there were 4 spirit beasts flying swiftly in the sky not far away. The spirit beast in the lead was a spirit beast with a slender and graceful figure, and a wingspan of 30 meters. On the broad back of the green bird sat a young woman with a peerlessly beautiful appearance who wore a green dress. She had a strength at the 6th level of the origin core stage, and her figure and appearance were both top-notch. She could be called a beauty that could topple cities. Even compared to Yun Yao, her looks and manners were almost the same. However, her temperament was gentle and demure, like the white clouds high in the sky. Her eyes were as clear and calm as a lake, without any ripples. Following behind the green bird were 3 spirit beasts, 2 flame birds and a 4-winged flying leopard. On the back of the 4-winged flying leopard sat a woman in a white dress. She was a little younger, and her looks and figure were also excellent. She could be considered a rare beauty. However, compared to the green-clothed beauty on the back of the blue bird, this woman paled in comparison. On the backs of the 2 blazing birds stood a black-robed guard, and both of them possessed a strength around the 4th level of the origin core stage. Everyone quickly flew through the sky, all of them raising their eyes to look at the distant central continent city. Although they were travel-worn and weary, their eyes were filled with anticipation. At this moment, the beautiful woman in green sitting upright on the back of the blue bird suddenly frowned. She raised her left hand, and a white light flashed within her palm. Then a simple light azure jade bracelet appeared out of thin air. At this moment, the light azure jade bracelet emitted a mysterious energy fluctuation, and it was ceaselessly flickering with an azure light. The beautiful woman in green frowned slightly when she saw this scene, and she muttered in a low voice. The azure shadow bracelet reacted again. Looks like there's another demon nearby. She immediately asked the blue bird to slow down and stop in the sky. The 3 spirit beasts behind hurriedly slowed down as well, and they stopped in the sky along with the blue bird. The white-clothed young woman on the back of the 4-winged flying leopard looked at the beautiful woman in green with a bewildered expression, and she asked, "Senior Sister Su Wan, we're about to arrive at Central Continent City. Why did you suddenly stop?" The beautiful woman in green called Su Wan said with a gentle tone, "Junior sister, there's a demon nearby. I'll go take a look at the situation. All of you wait for me here. I'll be right back." As soon as she finished speaking, she rode the blue bird and flew towards the nameless mountain below. The white-clothed young woman and the 2 black-robed guards could only wait in the sky and watch her figure disappear into the distance. Not long after, Su Wan relied on the reaction of the azure shadow bracelet to find the location of the demon. Swoosh! The blue bird landed on the nameless mountain peak. Su Wan jumped down from the back of the blue bird and stepped into the grass. She wore the azure shadow bracelet on her left wrist and held the azure shadow sword in her right hand. Her sharp eyes looked forward. Su Wan silently stepped through the grass and passed through a forest. She saw a grassland in front of her. According to the reaction of the Azure Shadow bracelet, the demon was in that grassland. However, when Xueqi saw the situation in the grassland, she immediately frowned and revealed a puzzled expression. This was because there was no demon in that open grassland. There was only a young man and woman. The aura of the demon actually came from that young woman? Could it be that she's a demon king that can transform into a human form? Xueqi pondered for a moment with a heart full of puzzlement before walking towards the young man and woman. Ji Tianqing was filled with worry. He was doing his best to protect Xueqi's heart and mind. At this moment, his spiritual sense suddenly detected that there was a woman rushing over from the grassland not far behind him. He subconsciously turned his head and looked at the green-clothed woman with a vigilant expression. When he saw the green-clothed woman's appearance, a hint of surprise flashed across his eyes. However, he quickly returned to normal. Seeing that the green-clothed woman was rushing over with a sword in her hand and seemed to have ill intentions, he shouted in a deep voice, "Stop! Who are you?" The green-clothed woman was Xueqi. When she heard Ji Tianqing's cold shout, she hurriedly stopped and stood 10 meters away. She sized up Ji Tianqing and Xueqi before putting away her sword. She cupped her hands and said, "Little brother, I'm the top disciple of the Heaven and Earth sect, and Xueqi." Heaven and Earth sect? Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a moment. He asked in confusion, "Is it the #1 sect in the Yong'an region, the Heaven and Earth sect?" And Xueqi was just reporting her identity out of courtesy. She did not expect him to have heard of the Heaven and Earth sect. After a moment of shock, she hurriedly nodded and said, "Yes." Ji Tianqing's gaze softened a lot. He asked calmly, "What are you doing here?" And Xueqi explained with a serious expression, "I was passing by just now and sensed the aura of a demon, so I came down to investigate the situation. According to my investigation, the demon aura came from your companion's body. I saw that she seemed to be injured and unconscious. Her situation is a little strange. I'm afraid it has something to do with the demon aura. I was born in a demon refining family and have been proficient in demon refining since I was young. Perhaps I can help you. Little brother, can you let me check on your companion's condition?" After hearing Xueqi's explanation, Ji Tianqing instantly frowned. He thought to himself, "Demon aura? The problem most likely lies with that cup of spirit tea. Kuan Wu is a demon prince. If he poisoned Ku's tea, it's very likely that he used demon methods." Chapter 507. Ji Tianqing was able to discern that what Xueqi said wasn't false and didn't seem to be lying. Her manner of speech, bearing were all something that only an elite disciple of a prestigious sect possessed. Moreover, her eyes were clear and bright, and her gaze was gentle and innocent. She didn't seem to have any other objective. Ji Tianqing thought in his heart, "I'm helpless towards Ku's situation. I can't even find out the crux of the problem, let alone help her. What Xueqi said is somewhat reasonable, and she doesn't seem like someone who harbors ill intentions. Why don't I let her try? Perhaps she'll really be able to find out the crux of the problem?" After making up his mind, he said to Xueqi with a dignified expression, "Miss Xueqi, I can allow you to examine Ku's body condition. However, I'll say this first. We don't know each other, so one must always be on guard against others. If you dare harm Ku, then I'll surely not be courteous to you." Although these words were slightly harsh, Xueqi was able to understand his feelings, so she nodded. "Don't worry, little brother, Xueqi, am absolutely not that type of person." As she finished speaking, she walked over to Xueqi's side in large strides, and she seriously and carefully examined Xueqi's situation. When she saw the 2 lumps of bulges that appeared on top of Xueqi's head, a strange expression flashed within her eyes as she vaguely guessed something. After that, she urged the Azure Shadow bracelet on her left wrist to execute some sort of profound secret technique, and she investigated the situation within Xueqi's body. During this period of time, Ji Tianqing had always been guarding by Xueqi's side, and his eyes stared fixedly at Xueqi. If Xueqi dared to harm Xueqi, then he would surely stop her with his fastest speed, and even be able to instantly kill Xueqi with a single move. After all, Xueqi only possessed a strength at the 6th level of the Origin Core stage. At such a close distance, Xueqi would absolutely be unable to dodge his killing move. Fortunately, what Ji Tianqing was worried about and on guard against didn't happen. Xueqi had always been seriously investigating Xueqi's situation, and she didn't have the slightest bit of ill intent, nor did she take any unusual actions. About half a quarter of an hour later, Ansuin was done with her investigation and finally stopped. She put away the green shadow bracelet and took out a dark green pill from her space ring. She was about to put it into Xueqi's mouth. Ji Tianqing immediately reached out to stop her and asked warily, "Miss Ansuin, what are you doing?" Ansuin was taken aback for a moment before replying subconsciously, "Of course it's to save your companion. You can't be thinking that I'm going to harm her, right?" A wisp of anger flashed in her eyes. She took back the dark green pill and said indifferently, "If little brother doesn't trust me, then I won't save him. On the other hand, a violent demonic energy is wreaking havoc in your companion's body, wantonly destroying her body and internal organs. If not treated in time, your companion's injuries will become more and more serious, and even his life will be in danger." After listening to her explanation, Ji Tianqing finally understood the reason. The violent energy in Xueqi's body is actually demonic energy? No wonder my true essence was useless and couldn't suppress that demonic energy. He stared into Ansuin's eyes. Seeing that her eyes were clear and bright, without the slightest hint of evasiveness, he withdrew his hand and nodded. "Thank you for saving him, Miss Ansuin didn't bicker with him." She put the dark green pill into Xueqi's mouth and circulated her energy to catalyze the pill. Immediately, the dark green pill turned into a wisp of green spiritual mist and entered Xueqi's body through his mouth. Not long after, the medicinal energy of the pill spread out and produced an effect. The violent demonic energy in Xueqi's body actually gradually calmed down. Her scorching hot body temperature quickly dropped and returned to normal after a short while. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing finally relaxed and let out a sigh of relief. He cupped his hands towards Ansuin and bowed, saying sincerely, "Miss An, thank you for saving me. I, Ji Tianqing, will remember this kindness in my heart." "It's nothing. You're welcome." Ansuin waved her hand, not minding this. Obviously, she had done this many times before, but she never cared about repayment. Ansuin frowned and looked at Ji Tianqing. After hesitating for a moment she said, "Ji Tianqing, there's something I must tell you." "What is it?" "Please speak frankly," Miss An. Ji Tianqing nodded. Ansuin said in a serious tone, "Your companion isn't human. She's a demonic beast." "What? 'Cause a demonic beast?" Ji Tianqing was stunned. His face was filled with disbelief. "That's impossible. Ku is obviously a human. We grew up together since we were young." Ansuin's expression didn't change. Her tone was firm as she said, "Ji Tianqing, our family has been demon refiners for generations. We've subdued countless demonic beasts. We're very familiar with demonic beasts and demonic energy. Of course, we demon refiners only deal with evil demonic beasts. We don't fight demonic beasts. An extremely mysterious and powerful demonic energy is sealed in the depths of your companion's soul. She also possesses the bloodline power of a demonic beast. Looking at her condition just now, she must have consumed something that stimulates her demonic energy and bloodline. That's why her demonic energy went berserk." Hearing Ansuin's words, Ji Tianqing suddenly recalled that when Xueqi awakened the Crimson Star bloodline, he had also fallen into a coma. At that time, the medicine elder had told him that an extremely powerful demonic energy was sealed in Xueqi's soul. That powerful demonic energy was innate. It was very likely that it had something to do with Xueqi's past. It was also that mysterious demonic energy that almost cost her her life. And now, Ansuin was saying the same thing. It was basically the same as what the medicine elder had said. Could it be? 'Cause really a demonic beast? Thinking up to this point, Ji Tianqing instantly fell silent. Seeing his silence, Ansuin continued, "Ji Tianqing, demonic beasts are between demonic beasts and humans. They're an extremely special race. Once a demonic beast, they'll be demonic beasts for all their lives. Although some demonic beasts are exactly the same as humans before they awaken their bloodline and demonic energy. However, when they're strong enough, or when they accept the demonic beast spirit awakening secret art, they'll awaken as demonic beasts and reveal their original appearance. Although I can't tell what kind of demonic beast your companion is for now. But soon, she'll definitely reveal her original appearance and become a true demonic beast. When that time comes, you'll naturally understand." Ansuin had said everything she needed to say. She didn't say anything else and quietly waited for Ji Tianqing's reply. Ji Tianqing pondered for a moment with a complicated expression. After a while, he cupped his hands in thanks and said, "Thank you for telling me this, Miss N. Whether 'cause a demonic beast or not, she's still one of the most important people to me. Miss N, what kind of pill did you give Ku? How long will the pill's effects last? I'm worried that before long, the demonic energy in Ku's body will go berserk again. When that happens, she'll have to suffer again." And Suan nodded and revealed a regretful expression. She said, "I'm sorry. The pill I gave her just now was a secret pill concocted by our own family. I only have one pill on me. In her current condition, she can only maintain it for a few days." Chapter 508. And Suan had already done everything she could and said everything she could. Ji Tianqing understood that as a stranger they met by chance, she had already done everything she could. "Miss N, thank you again for your help," he thanked Suan with a solemn expression. "You're welcome," and Suan nodded slightly in response. At this moment, a four-winged leopard descended from the sky and landed on the grass. A white-clothed girl jumped off the back of the four-winged leopard and quickly walked towards Ji Tianqing and Suan. The white-clothed girl stared at Ji Tianqing and Ji Ku for a while before saying to Suan, "Senior Marshal Sister Suan, we should go. If we delay any longer, we won't be able to keep the appointment on time. At that time, the other party will inevitably feel that we're not punctual." The white-clothed girl's personality was more lively. Once she opened her mouth, she would talk endlessly without stopping. However, when Suan turned her head and glanced at her, she immediately stopped talking. Suan nodded at Ji Tianqing and calmly said, "I still have matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave first." Ji Tianqing cupped his hands in salute and watched as she flew into the sky on her blue bird, flying towards Central State City. After a long time, he withdrew his gaze and picked up the unconscious Ji Ku. He spread his wings and flew into the sky, rushing towards the city. 2 hours later, Ji Tianqing returned to Clear Wind Courtyard. As soon as he entered Clear Jade Courtyard, he ran into Yen Er. When Yen Er saw him carrying the unconscious Ji Ku, she immediately revealed a puzzled and worried expression. "Senior Marshal Brother Tianqing, what's wrong with Junior Marshal Sister Ji Ku? What happened?" "Let's talk inside." Ji Tianqing carried Ji Ku into her room and placed her on the bed. After settling Ji Ku down, he explained to Yen Er what happened earlier. When Yen Er learned the whole story, his little face suddenly showed a strong anger, and he shouted in a low voice, "Kunwu, as the Demon Clan Prince, the Imperial Prince of the Monarch Mansion, actually did such a thing?" Junior Marshal Sister Ji Ku had never crossed paths with him before. Why would he scheme to murder Junior Marshal Sister Ji Ku? Ji Tianqing said with a cold expression, "Previously, I thought that Ku and Wu had poisoned the spirit tea, but Ku and I both drank the tea. I was safe and sound, but she suffered such a great change. Later on, I met the head disciple of the Chenkuan sect, Suan. She was born in a family of demon refiners, so she was very familiar with demon beasts and demon energy. After her explanation, I understood that Ku and Wu must have done something to the tea. I'm a human. Of course, I'm fine after drinking that kind of tea. However, Ku's demon power and bloodline were stimulated, which is why she's unconscious." Yen Er nodded and asked in a deep voice, "Senior Brother Tianqing, what should we do now?" "Let's go to Star Moon Village and settle the score with Kunwu." Ji Tianqing pondered for a moment, then shook his head and said, "The most important thing right now is to find Senior Beast King and explain this matter to him. Senior Beast King has studied how to cultivate demon beasts and spirit beasts for his entire life. He should understand this situation and may be able to think of a solution. It won't be too late for us to settle the score with Ku and Wu after Ku's condition stabilizes." Yen Er thought for a moment and nodded in agreement. "All right, we'll do as Senior Brother said. I'll go and ask Senior Beast King to come here now." After saying that, he quickly walked out of Clear Jade Garden to find the Beast King. Not long after, the Beast King hurried to Clear Jade Garden. After Ji Tianqing explained the situation to him, he cast a spell to check on Ji Ku's condition. He spent a quarter of an hour to clearly check on Ji Ku's condition. Then he frowned and said, "Ji Ku's condition has stabilized. She's not in any danger. There's a powerful and mysterious force hidden in her body, and it's undoubtedly demon energy. However, that demon energy is too strong and violent. I can't see any clues and can't do anything about it. For now, we can only wait for Ji Ku to wake up and think of another way." Seeing that the Beast King was also helpless, Ji Tianqing and were a little disappointed and worried. Everyone could only disperse and patiently wait for Ji Ku to wake up. Unknowingly, a day had passed. The next morning, Ji Ku finally woke up. She slowly opened her eyes and looked around. Then, she found herself lying in her room. The room was very quiet. There was no one else except her. Why am I in my room? Where's Big Brother Tianqing? Was he the one who sent me back? What the hell happened yesterday? Ji Ke murmured a few words with a puzzled expression. She raised her hand to rub her sore eyes and prepared to get out of bed and walk around. However, when she rubbed her eyes with both hands, she suddenly felt a stinging pain in her eyes. She faintly felt that something was wrong and subconsciously looked at her hands. When she saw the appearance of her hands clearly, she was instantly stunned. Her face was full of astonishment. He saw that her originally slender and soft hands had grown thick golden fur at some point in time. Not only were her slender and fair fingers full of golden fur, but they also grew sharp and long black nails. Her hands had turned into a pair of beast claws. They looked somewhat similar to a cat's claws. My hands. How did they become like this? Ji Ku was completely dumbfounded. She could not believe her eyes. The sudden change in visual impact made her mind go blank. She was at a loss. After a long time, she came back to her senses and hurriedly jumped out of bed. She hurriedly found a bronze mirror and reflected her appearance. When she saw that there were no obvious changes to her cheeks in the bronze mirror, she heaved a sigh of relief. But in the next moment, she was shocked to see two furry ears growing out of the top of her head on both sides of her head. They were two light golden furry ears. The ears were a little short and triangular. They looked very cute. At first glance, the two little ears looked a little like a cat's ears. However, her original human ears had disappeared into thin air. Ji Ke could not believe all of this. Her psychological defenses immediately collapsed and she screamed on the spot. Intense panic and helplessness made her tremble all over. The bronze mirror in her hand fell to the ground. The sound of footsteps immediately came from the courtyard outside the room. A moment later, Ji Tianqing's voice, which was filled with concern, was heard in the room. "Cuckoo, are you awake?" Ji Ku, who was in a daze, immediately came back to her senses when she heard Ji Tianqing's voice. She instinctively stood up and rushed to the door with a face full of grievances and fear. At this moment, she was extremely afraid. However, she did not know how to face it. She only wanted to throw herself into Ji Tianqing's arms and cry. However, when she rushed to the door and reached out to open it, she suddenly stopped in her tracks. Her body froze on the spot. She saw her pair of furry little paws and instantly woke up from her dream. Her eyes were full of despair. Chapter 509. Ji Tianqing stood outside the door. Seeing that there was no movement in the room, he asked again. "Cuckoo, are you okay? I came to check on you." As he spoke, Ji Tianqing was about to push open the door. Ji Ke's body suddenly trembled. She pressed her hands against the door and hurriedly said, "Big Brother Tianqing, I'm a bit tired. I want to rest a bit more." She tried her best to suppress the sadness and despair in her heart, not allowing her voice to reveal any trace of abnormality. Ji Tianqing was silent outside the door for a moment before replying, "All right, then rest well. Call me if you need anything." Ji Ke's voice was muffled as a layer of mist appeared in her clear eyes. Sparkling tears fell from the corners of her eyes. After a moment, she heard the footsteps outside the door fade away. Only then did she let out a sigh of relief. She silently wiped away her tears and returned to the bedside to sit down. She stared at her hands, looking as if she had lost her soul. Time quietly passed. Unknowingly, it was already afternoon. Ji Tianqing was meditating and cultivating in his room when he suddenly heard a crisp crack coming from the room next door. The sudden cracking sound broke the tranquility of pure jade court. Ji Tianqing was instantly awakened. He immediately rushed out of his room and dashed into Ji Ke's room. As soon as he pushed open the door, he saw Ji Ke lying unconscious on the ground. Beside her was a pile of shattered vase. Seeing this scene, he immediately guessed that the demon energy in Ji Ke's body must have suddenly flared up, causing her so much pain that she wanted to die and causing her to fall unconscious. And when she fell unconscious on the ground, she knocked over the vase beside her. and Suan said that the medicine's effects would last for a few days. The demon energy in Xueqi's body will only flare up after a few days. I didn't think that Xueqi's demon energy would flare up in just a day. Ji Tianqing was filled with anxiety and worry. He hurriedly entered the room and walked to Xueqi's side to check on her condition. However, when he saw Xueqi's appearance, he was stunned. Xueqi's hands turned into furry beast claws. 2 triangular furry ears popped out from the thick black hair on top of her head. Behind her skirt, half of her fluffy golden tail could be vaguely seen. Even though her height, body shape, and facial features had not changed much. However, the beast claws, ears, and tail that suddenly appeared on her body still gave Ji Tianqing a great shock and visual impact. He had never thought that within a short span of a day, Xueqi's appearance had undergone such a huge change. Although he was mentally prepared, he was still stunned for a moment when he saw Xueqi's sudden change in appearance. After a while, he slowly came back to his senses. Xueqi was lying unconscious on the ground. Her small face was deathly pale. Her miserable and pitiful appearance was pitiful. However, her cute claws, little ears, and fluffy little tail did not look sinister or demonic at all. Instead, it made her look even more charming and adorable. Ji Tianqing was sizing up Xueqi when Yan'er and Qianyu rushed into the room like a gust of wind. Senior Marshal Brother Tianqing, I heard some movement here just now. What happened? Yan'er asked with concern as soon as he entered the room. As he spoke, he also saw the situation in the room. When he saw the unconscious Xueqi on the ground, he was shocked and stopped in his tracks. How did Junior Marshal Sister Xueqi become like this? Ji Tianqing shook his head and frowned. I don't know what happened. Maybe the demon energy in her body went berserk again. After saying that, he reached out to Xueqi's forehead and cheeks and used his spiritual sense to check her situation. The situation was as he said. Xueqi's body was burning hot and there was a mysterious and violent demon energy in her body that was surging and erupting. At this time, Yan'er stared at Xueqi and observed her for a moment. He couldn't help but frown and say, Junior Marshal Sister Xueqi's demon energy erupted, so she demonized and revealed the characteristics of the demon race? But look at Junior Marshal Sister Xueqi's hands and ears. Why do they look like a fox? As he said that, he glanced at Xueqi's ears and tail and then turned to look at Qianyu's appearance. Qianyu suddenly frowned and said in a serious tone, Yan'er, don't talk nonsense if you don't know anything. A fox is a fox and a raccoon is a raccoon. A fox and a raccoon are 2 different races. A fox is much smarter than a raccoon. Judging from Xueqi's demonized characteristics, she should be a raccoon. I'm different from her. I'm a fox and a noble divine beast, the heavenly fox. Yan'er nodded as if he understood. He stared at Xueqi for a moment and muttered to himself, Why do I feel that a raccoon is cuter than a fox? Qianyu glared at him and said angrily, Don't compare me with Xueqi, okay? She's a demon and I'm a divine beast. How can you compare us? Yan'er scratched his head and smiled, but he didn't say anything more. After Ji Tianqing used his spiritual sense to check Xueqi's situation, he frowned and said, Stop arguing. Xueqi's situation is very unstable and dangerous. We must find a way to save her. Moreover, the signs of her demonization are getting worse. If we don't find a way to suppress that demon energy, I'm afraid she will change again. Yan'er also showed an anxious and worried expression. He said in a low voice, Senior Brother Tianqing, our true essence can't suppress Junior Sister Xueqi's demon energy. Even Senior Beast King can't do anything. We don't have any relatives in Central State City. Who can we ask for help? Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a moment. A cold light flashed in his eyes and he said in a low voice, Take care of Xueqi. Use your spiritual sense to protect her heart and mind. Don't let her life be in danger. I'm going to Star Moon Village to find that bastard Kunwu and ask him. After saying that, he picked up the unconscious Xueqi and placed her on the bed. Yan'er and Qianyu used their spiritual sense to protect Xueqi's heart and mind. Ji Tianqing was about to walk out of the room and rush to Star Moon Village. At this moment, a loud and clear voice came from outside the courtyard. You don't need to go to Star Moon Village. This monarch has come personally. Ji Tianqing was not unfamiliar with this voice. He raised his head and saw Prince Kunwu crossing the gate and stepping into the courtyard. In addition to Kunwu, There were also 2 demon clan guards in black armor guarding the entrance of Pure Jade Garden. Kunwu quickly walked through the courtyard and went straight to Ji Ku's room. When Ji Tianqing saw him, his eyes darkened. He shouted with a cold expression, "Kunwu, you came uninvited. It seems like you have a plan. Speak. What did you do to Ji Ku?" Kunwu looked at him calmly and said in an indifferent tone, "Ji Tianqing, I'll say it again. This monarch has no evil intentions. Everything I did was for Ji Ku's good. 24 hours have passed and the effect of the Spirit Awakening Tea has completely taken effect. Ji Ku should have shown her true form by now." Chapter 5:10. Upon hearing Kunwu's words, Ji Tianqing's expression suddenly changed and a cold light burst out from his eyes. Spirit Awakening Tea? Revealing her true form? Kunwu, you already knew that Ji Ku is a demon, so you deliberately used this scheme? Ji Ku has no enmity with you. What does it have to do with you whether she's a human or a demon? Why do you want to harm her? Kunwu shook her head and stared at Ji Tianqing. Her tone was solemn as she said, "Ji Tianqing, this monarch's actions are a conspiracy to harm her. However, this monarch is helping her. I came here today to save her." Having said that, she saw that Ji Tianqing's anger still hadn't subsided and his eyes were full of hostility, so she added another sentence. "If you don't want anything to happen to Ji Ku, then let this monarch go in and check her situation. This monarch will let you know the answer and give you a reasonable explanation." Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a moment before saying in a deep voice, "Kunwu, it's you who made Ku become like this today. You made her suffer pain and danger. Since you came here today, you must give me an explanation. Otherwise I won't spare you." Kunwu also frowned and squinted at him, revealing an arrogant and confident sneer. "You dare to talk nonsense about dealing with this monarch?" Ji Tianqing's aura was also confident and powerful as he said, "You might as well give it a try." Kunwu narrowed her eyes and didn't say anything. She stepped past him and entered Ji Ku's room. In the room, Ji Ku was lying unconscious on the bed. Her body was burning hot and her face was flushed. Yen and Qian Yu were using their skills to protect Ji Ku's heart and mind. Kunwu quickly walked to the bed and looked at Ji Ku with eyes full of expectation. When he saw Ji Ku's hands, ears and light golden fluffy tail, he suddenly looked excited and bright light surged in his eyes. "Great! I really didn't guess wrong." Ji Tianqing, Yen and Qian Yu were all anxious and worried about Ji Ku. Kuan Wu, on the other hand, was somewhat excited and pleasantly surprised. Naturally, everyone frowned and stared at him coldly. Kuan Wu ignored everyone's reaction and muttered to herself with a smile, "No wonder when I saw her, I felt a sense of déjà vu and my soul throbbed. She really isn't a human, but a member of my Golden Raccoon clan." After saying that, he raised his hand and cast a secret technique to check the condition of Ji Ku's body. When he sensed the raging demonic energy in Ji Ku's body, the joy in his eyes grew even stronger. What pure and powerful demonic energy! As he spoke, he took out a crimson pill from his interspatial ring and fed it to Ji Ku. This time, there was no need for Ji Tianqing to speak. Yen and Qian Yu both glared at Kunwu and stopped him. "Kuan Wu, what are you doing? What kind of pill is this? You're giving it to Ji Ku so casually, are you trying to harm her?" Ignoring Yen and Qian Yu, Kuan Wu looked sideways at Ji Tianqing and said sternly, "Ji Tianqing, the answer has been confirmed. Ji Ku is my clansman. I'm going to save her now, and I'll explain it to you later." Ji Tianqing frowned and nodded to Yen and Qian Yu. Yen and Qian Yu no longer stopped him. Kuan Wu quickly put the crimson pill into Ji Ku's mouth and channeled his power to catalyze the pill into a crimson light. Swoosh! The crimson light was like flowing water, drilling into Ji Ku's body and immediately erupting with a powerful medicinal effect. In just 100 breaths, the medicinal effect spread throughout Ji Ku's body and temporarily suppressed the turbulent demonic energy in her body. Ji Ku's body temperature gradually returned to normal, and her physical condition also calmed down. She was out of danger. Seeing this situation, everyone breathed a sigh of relief and finally felt relieved. Ji Tianqing stared at Kuan Wu and said with an expressionless face, "Kuan Wu, you just said that Ji Ku is from the Golden Raccoon clan and is also your clansman. What's going on?" Kuan Wu nodded and explained in a neither fast nor slow tone, "That's right. Ji Ku is indeed not a human, but a clansman of our Golden Raccoon clan. The Golden Raccoon clan is a noble clan of the Demon clan. Their numbers are few and their bloodline is very noble and special. When I saw her on the street that day, I felt that she was very special and seemed to be related to me by blood. Since that day, I have suspected that she is not a human and is very likely to be a demon clan. Therefore, I secretly sent someone to follow her to Qing Feng courtyard and investigated her situation. Ji Tianqing said with an expressionless face, "Since you sent someone to investigate Ji Ku, you should know that she comes from the Heavenly Stellar Region's Royal Azure Dynasty and is a royal princess. If she is a demon clan, how could she be born in a human kingdom?" Kuan Wu pondered for a moment and said, "Central region is too far away from the Heavenly Stellar Region. In a short period of time, my subordinates can't find her in the Heavenly Stellar Region. I don't know her background. Therefore, I ordered someone to send an invitation card to invite her to Star Moon Manor to meet me. I don't want to waste time and only want to find out her identity as soon as possible. That's why I gave you the Spirit Awakening tea." Kuan Wu. "This is the reason why you caused her to become like this?" Ji Tianqing revealed a cold smile and said in a cold tone, "For more than 10 years, Ji Ku has been living as a human. She has family and friends and has her own path to walk. Even if there is demon chi hidden in her body, you don't have the right to turn her from a human into a demon clan. Now that she is unconscious, when she wakes up and sees that she has become a demon clan, I don't know how panicked and painful she will be. You keep saying that it's for her own good. But have you ever thought about how she will face this result when she wakes up? How much harm will you bring to her by acting on your own?" Kuan Wu frowned and said in a solemn tone, "Ji Tianqing, you probably don't understand. The demon clan is an extremely special clan. Born as a demon clan, she will be a demon clan for all eternity. Even if she temporarily has the appearance of a human, her soul and the bloodline in her bones are ultimately demon clans. One day, she will reveal her true form. Moreover, Ji Ku has a mysterious and violent demon chi hidden in her body. Sooner or later, she will be unable to suppress it and explode. If she doesn't refine it soon, she will definitely suffer pain and torture. She might even lose her life. You guys are helpless against the demon chi in her body, but I can help her refine it and turn danger into safety. She won't have to suffer any more danger and pain." Speaking of this, Kuan Wu paused for a moment. He revealed an unruly smile and said in a proud tone, "Moreover, what's so good about being an ordinary human? Our Golden Raccoon clan is the royal clan of the Demon clan. How noble is our bloodline and status. The purity of Ji Ku's bloodline and demon chi is not inferior to mine. In the past, she cultivated the human clan's martial Tao, so her progress was slow and she didn't have many achievements." Chapter 5:11. Although the Golden Raccoon clan was the royal family of the demon race, their bloodline was noble and powerful. But in the past 1,000 years, the number of Golden Raccoon clan members had been decreasing, their talents were also withering, and their power and prestige were not as good as before. Because of this, Kuan Wu was so excited when he found out that Ji Ku was from the Golden Raccoon clan. Moreover, Ji Ku's bloodline and demon power purity were not inferior to his. In the Golden Raccoon clan, she was a top genius. With a little training, she would definitely become a heavenly Yuan powerhouse. She might even reach the spirit refinement realm and become a demon emperor powerhouse. In his excitement, Kuan Wu naturally decided to bring Ji Ku back and take good care of her. However, Ji Tianqing frowned when he heard what Yangming said. Ji Tianqing looked at him sharply and asked in a deep voice, "Kuan Wu, what do you mean? Do you want to take Ji Ku away?" Kuan Wu looked at him doubtfully and asked back, "Ji Ku is my clansman. Of course, I want to take her away. Isn't that right? Moreover, you can't save her, let alone help her grow stronger. Only I can do that." Kuan Wu took it for granted and his tone was tough and domineering. "Don't even think about it." Ji Tianqing refused flatly and said firmly, "Even if Cuckoo is from the Golden Raccoon clan, she has the right to choose. Now that she is unconscious, I will make the decision for her. She can't accept the identity of a demon, and it's impossible for her to go with you. Cuckoo has parents and relatives who are the royal family of Qingyun Kingdom. She also has us as her best friends. But she has nothing to do with you. What right do you have to take her away?" Yan, and Qian Yu nodded in agreement. "That's right. Kuan Wu, although you are a demon prince, You can't be so overbearing. You have no right to interfere in our affairs. Kuan Wu. Jiku will never go with you. Give up. Kuan Wu's face stiffened and anger flashed across his eyes. If someone else had dared to stop him, he would not have cared about their thoughts and decisions. He would have forcefully taken Jiku away. However, he knew very well that Ji Tianxing was no ordinary expert. Although he was not at the Heaven Origin stage, he was stronger than a Heaven Origin stage expert. If he wanted to act recklessly, he would definitely have to fight a fierce battle today. Things would also become completely deadlocked, which would not benefit him in the slightest. Thinking of this, Kuan Wu suppressed the anger in his heart and patiently explained. Ji Tianxing, I've already made it very clear. Ji Ku is a member of the Golden Raccoon clan and definitely not a human. She's definitely not a princess of the Royal Azure dynasty and has no blood relations with the royal family. As he spoke, he took out a simple and unadorned round mirror from his spatial ring. This is a secret treasure of my Yao clan, the Seven Treasures Reincarnation Mirror. It can see through the bloodline of a Yao clan and their past and present lives. Everyone's gaze fell on the Seven Treasures Reincarnation Mirror, frowning as they sized it up. They saw that the mirror was the size of 2 palms and was completely bronze in color. The front of the mirror was a blurry mirror surface while the back was engraved with mysterious patterns and patterns. The edges had already been worn smooth. At a glance, this mirror was an ancient treasure that had experienced thousands of years and exuded an ancient and mysterious aura. As I said earlier, those who were born as Yao clan will be Yao clan for all eternity. I'll let you see Jika's past life now so that you'll know that she has nothing to do with the human race. As Kuan Wu spoke, he executed the Yao clan's secret technique. He held the Seven Treasures Reincarnation Mirror in his left hand and formed hand seals with his right hand. With a wave of his hand, he shot out rays of silver brilliance and injected them into the Seven Treasures Reincarnation Mirror. A moment later, he was done with the technique and the Seven Treasures Reincarnation Mirror also lit up with a dazzling silver light. When he held the Seven Treasures Reincarnation Mirror and aimed it at Jiku, the mirror burst forth with an invisible mysterious energy that enveloped Jiku. The blurry mirror surface of the mirror also lit up with silver light, forming a silver light screen. The appearance and scene of Jiku's past life was about to appear on the silver light screen. Not only was Kuan Wu's eyes filled with anticipation, Ji Tianxing, Yan Er, and Qian Yu were also staring intently at the mirror surface of the mirror. However, everyone waited for a full 100 breaths of time and did not see the scene of Jiku's past life appear. In the mirror surface of the mirror, there was only a hazy white mist. Other than that, nothing could be seen. Ji Tianxing immediately frowned and looked at Kuan Wu suspiciously. Qian Yu curled his lips in disdain and said in a contemptuous tone, "'Tis still a Yao clan's secret treasure? Seeing you boast so much and act so mysterious, I thought it was very magical." Yan Er also pouted and said with a face full of disdain, "'Tis still an emperor's son, actually playing tricks on others." Kuan Wu was both embarrassed and puzzled. His embarrassed face turned pale as he sized up the mirror in puzzlement. How can this be? It's impossible. This sovereign has used this Seven Treasures Reincarnation Mirror countless times. It works every time. How can it not detect Jiku's past life? He tried again and again twice, but still could not detect Jiku's past life. The mirror still showed a white mist. How can it be so strange? This sovereign does not believe it. Since I can't detect your past life, then this sovereign will look at your present life. Kuan Wu frowned and used the secret technique again, sending silver light into the Seven Treasures Reincarnation Mirror. This time, he finally succeeded. The Seven Treasures Reincarnation Mirror finally reacted. On the mirror surface of the mirror, a light screen condensed by silver light appeared, showing a picture. In the picture, there was a towering mountain overflowing with spiritual energy. At the foot of the mountain, there was a winding river like a jade belt. Halfway up the mountain, there was a simple and majestic temple that was full of incense. It was called Guangling Temple. At this moment, there was a majestic royal guard of honor walking from halfway up the mountain to the foot of the mountain. Among the hundreds of people, there were more than 20 royal guards carrying a golden and jade-inlaid dragon carriage. In the dragon carriage sat a middle-aged man wearing a golden dragon robe and a graceful imperial concubine. The emperor and imperial concubine had clearly just bowed to Buddha and were about to leave Guangling Temple. At this moment, the guard of honor was walking on the blue stone official road at the foot of the mountain. In the river next to the official road, a golden koi fish that was 5 to 6 meters long suddenly appeared. That huge golden koi fish was not afraid of people. It slowly swam across the river and stopped by the side of the official road. Koi fish represented auspicious signs, and such a huge golden koi fish was rarely seen in 1,000 years. It meant good fortune from the heavens. The guard of honor immediately stopped. The emperor and imperial concubine in the dragon carriage were also alarmed. A few royal guards went down to the riverbank to check the situation and found that the golden koi fish was carrying a huge shell on its back. A few royal guards worked together to remove the shell. The golden koi fish then dived into the water and disappeared. When the royal guards opened the shell, they found that there was a white and tender baby girl lying in the shell. For a moment, the entire guard of honor was shocked. The royal guards quickly carried the shell to the front of the dragon carriage and presented it to the emperor and imperial concubine. Seeing the cute baby girl sleeping soundly in the shell, the emperor was delighted and happily carried the baby girl. It was strange that the baby girl, who was sleeping soundly, immediately woke up after being carried by the emperor. Moreover, not only did she not cry, she even showed a happy smile to the emperor and imperial concubine. Such a rare thing made the emperor and imperial concubine very excited. The emperor hugged the baby girl and looked up to the sky. No one knew what he said excitedly. Over 100 guards of honor knelt down and kowtowed to the sky. Chapter 5:12. The image in the Seven Treasures reincarnation mirror gradually disappeared. Everyone seemed to have understood something when they saw this. Ji Tianqing frowned and pondered for a moment before whispering to himself, I suddenly remembered that the image just now was very similar to a legend of the royal Azure dynasty. About 10 years ago, the royal Azure dynasty emperor had a beloved concubine. After she was conferred the title of imperial concubine, she could not give birth to a child for many years. Later on, after repeated examinations by the palace's imperial physicians, they found that the imperial concubine's body was abnormal and she was born infertile. Since there was no cure, the imperial concubine begged the royal Azure dynasty emperor to follow her to Guangling Temple to pray that the heavens would give her a child. In the end, the imperial concubine's sincerity moved the heavens. Not long after she and the emperor finished praying, she became pregnant and gave birth to a smart and cute little princess. At this point, Ji Tianqing's tone was a little complicated. The little princess that the heavens gave to the imperial concubine was Xueqi. That year, this matter spread around the imperial city for a while and caused many people to talk about it. But for some reason, Xueqi's mother, the imperial concubine, passed away in less than 2 years. Xueqi's origin was also banned by the palace and no one was allowed to talk about it anymore. Now it seems that the image just now is somewhat consistent with the legend. However, Xueqi was not the imperial concubine's child. She was carried by a koi. Yen Er's face was full of surprise and she nodded in admiration. I didn't expect Junior Ji's origin to be so mysterious and bizarre. The emperor prayed to Buddha and a koi carried a baby from the river. This is just like a fairy tale. Chen Yu narrowed his eyes and glanced sideways at Kuan Wu. He said in a playful tone, since Ji Ku is from the Golden Raccoon clan, why did she appear in the royal Azure dynasty after she was born? She was also lying in a shell and was carried out of the water by a koi? There's something fishy about this. I'm afraid there's a big problem. Kuan Wu frowned slightly and said in a serious tone, that's right. Ji's origin is indeed a little bizarre. I know there must be some hidden story and twists and turns. Therefore, after I take Jiku away, I will definitely send people to investigate this matter and find out the ins and outs of this matter. Ji Tianqing looked at him indifferently and said in a solemn and unquestionable tone, Kuan Wu, I have already said it. Even if Ku is from the Golden Raccoon tribe, you won't be able to take her away today. Whether she stays or goes, only she can decide. No one can force her. Kun was stared at him coldly and asked in a deep voice, Ji Tianqing, are you really going to stop me? Is there no room for negotiation? Of course. Ji Tianqing said in a sonorous tone. Kuan Wu furrowed his brows and squinted his eyes. A cold light flashed in his eyes. However, after weighing the pros and cons in silence for a moment, he finally chose to compromise. Very good. It's Ji's fortune to have a close friend like you protecting her. I can temporarily not take her away and let her make her own choice. However, you must remember to tell her that if she encounters any danger or problem in the future, she can come to Star Moon Manor to find me. Kuan Wu said these words with a solemn expression. He then took out a small white jade bottle and handed it to Ji Tianxing. There are 3 special pills in here. If Ji Ke's monster qi erupts again and she encounters danger, she can take these pills to alleviate it. After saying that, Kuan Wu turned around and walked out of the room. He quickly left Clear Jade Court. Ji Tianxing held the small white jade bottle and watched Kuan Wu's back as he left. The fierce look in his eyes gradually faded. Seeing that Ji Ke's situation was stable and there was no major problem for the time being, he let Yen and Qian Yu go back to cultivate. He stayed in Ji Ke's room and sat on the bed to cultivate. He also looked after the unconscious Ji Ke. Unknowingly, another few hours had passed. It was late at night. Jade Pure Garden was dark and very quiet. At this time, Ji Ke finally woke up and slowly opened her eyes. She looked around and found that she was still in the room. She secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, they didn't see my appearance. However, when she turned her head to look at the bed, she saw Ji Tianxing sitting on the bed cultivating. At that moment, Ji Ke seemed to have been struck by lightning. Her body suddenly stiffened and her expression became very ugly. Ah! Tianxing Gij. Why are you here? She subconsciously cried out in alarm, her pretty face revealing a panicked expression, and her heart was instantly thrown into chaos. Ji Tianxing was startled awake. He opened his eyes and looked at her, revealing a look of concern. Cuckoo, you're finally awake. How do you feel now? Ji Ke looked at him with tears in her eyes. She repeatedly shook her head and retreated to the corner of the bed. She subconsciously raised her hands to cover her cheeks and golden little ears. However, she didn't want to expose her fluffy claws. She quickly turned her head to the corner of the room with her back facing Ji Tianxing. No, Tianxing Gij, quickly turn around. Don't look at me. However, she only wanted to cover her claws and ears. She didn't notice that when her back was facing Ji Tianxing, her fluffy golden tail appeared in front of Ji Tianxing. Tianxing Gij, quickly get out. I'm begging you. Ji Ke's tears flowed out of her eyes. Her voice was also sobbing. She was anxious, helpless, and aggrieved. She was at a loss. She couldn't accept that she had turned into a demon. She didn't want the person she loved to see her ugliest appearance. Ji Tianxing naturally understood her feelings. He stood up and sat next to her. He comforted her softly. Cuckoo, we grew up together. We're childhood sweethearts. We're the best friends in the world. No matter what you've experienced, no matter what changes you've undergone, you'll always be the cutest little princess in my heart. As he spoke, he pressed his hands on her shoulders and turned her to face him. Ji Ke faced him, but her head was buried in her chest. She didn't dare to look at his expression or eyes. She was very terrified and afraid to see Ji Tianxing's disappointed expression or disdainful gaze. However, Ji Tianxing continued. Cuckoo, your bloodline and background aren't something you can decide. The identity of a demon is determined from generation to generation. However, you can choose to face it bravely and treat us, your friends, as always. If we're disappointed in you one day, it won't be because you've turned into a demon. It'll be because you're deliberately distancing yourself from us and unwilling to face us. Do you understand? Ji Ke stopped crying. She lowered her head in silence for a long time. Only then did she muster the courage to look up at Ji Tianxing. She stared into Ji Tianxing's eyes. After hesitating for a long time, she asked, Tianxing Gij, I've turned into this appearance. Will you really not dislike me? Chapter 5:13. Ji Ke's ears were pinched by Ji Tianxing. Her sadness, fear, and helplessness quickly dissipated. She was a little shy and uncomfortable. She struggled slightly and asked hesitantly in a low voice, Brother Tianxing, do you really think she's cute? Ji Tianxing nodded and chuckled. Of course. And she's even cuter than Qian Yu. As soon as his voice fell, Qian Yu's angry voice came from outside the door. Old Ji, you're a guy who forgets his friends for a girl. How dare you speak ill of her behind her back? Immediately after, Qian Yu and Yen quickly entered the room. Yen looked at Ji Ke with concern, while Qian Yu stared at Ji Tianxing angrily. Ji Tianxing smiled awkwardly and touched the tip of his nose, not explaining anything. When Ji Ke saw Yen and Qian Yu, She shrank back unconfidently and wanted to cover her hands and tail with the quilt. She had just calmed down after the sudden change, so her heart was still very sensitive. However, Ji Tianqing, Yan and Qian Yu all comforted her, and she gradually calmed down. When Ji Ke's emotions calmed down, Ji Tianqing took out the white jade bottle that Kuan Wu gave him and handed it to Ji Ku. Kuan Wu came by just now and explained the situation clearly to us. You are indeed a demon, and you're from the same clan as Kuan Wu. You're from the noble Golden Raccoon clan. Ji Tianqing told Ji Ke the truth of the matter and explained it to her in detail. He also told her what Kuan Wu said before he left. Cuckoo, this is the truth of the matter. There are very few people in the Golden Raccoon clan, so when Kuan Wu found out that you're from his clan, he wanted to take you away. I didn't agree to this matter. You have to wait until you wake up and make your own decision. Ji Ke couldn't accept the truth and reality for a while. She shook her head without hesitation. No, I don't know that Kuan Wu at all. I will never go with him. Tianqing Gij, no matter what happens, no matter where you go, I will follow you forever. You are the only family I have in the central state. No matter what, I will not leave you. Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. He comforted her softly. Okay, as long as you make the choice, I will support you. I will never force you to do something you don't want to do. Yes. Ji Ke hurriedly nodded. After thinking for a moment, he continued, I'm going to write a letter and send it back to Qingyun Kingdom. I want to ask Imperial Father who I am. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said, That's what I should do. Such an important matter should be clarified. All right, Ku, don't let your imagination run wild. Take a good rest these few days. He said a few words to Ji Ku before leaving with Qian Yu and Yan He knew very well that Ji Ku was only a 15-year-old girl after all. She needed some time alone to calm down after such a drastic change. Peace was restored in Clear Jade Court. For the next few days, Ji Ke stayed in the room to recuperate. The demonic energy in his body did not act up again. Ji Tianqing saw that her condition had stabilized and entered the secret chamber to cultivate in seclusion. He worked hard to improve his strength. There were only 20 days left before the heavenly consort selection. Time was of the essence. He only wanted to break through to Sky Origin stage before that day arrived. Although Ji Tianqing had not fought with Long Yun Shao, he knew that Long Yun Shao was already at Sky Origin stage. He also knew that Long Yun Shao had reached Sky Origin stage 2. He also had many trump cards and secret techniques. His combat strength must be very strong. He could only win the battle with Long Yun Shao. He could not lose. Only when he broke through to Sky Origin stage could he guarantee that nothing would go wrong. In the dimly lit secret chamber, Ji Tianqing sat cross-legged in the middle of the spirit-gathering array. His eyes were closed as he silently cultivated. His body was like a whirlpool or a perfect spiritual jade, constantly absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the air. In the sword palace in his body, the 18 sword veins and 108 acupoints was surging with true core strength. It was like a great river flowing endlessly. He continued to cultivate one cycle after another. He used the vigorous true core strength to refine the sword veins and acupoints. He continued to strengthen the power of the sword embryo. As time passed, his strength was slowly increasing. His martial arts foundation was also becoming more and more solid. However, he had been cultivating in seclusion for 10 days. His strength had become more profound, but he still could not touch the shackles of Sky Origin stage. He could not even touch the shackles of Sky Origin stage. How could he break through the shackles? He still had a long way to go before he could break through to Sky Origin stage. Early in the morning, Ji Tianqing was still cultivating in the secret chamber. Suddenly, the deep voice of the burial of heaven rang in his mind. Kid, maybe you should consider opening up another path and change the direction of your cultivation. When Ji Tianqing heard the voice of the burial of heaven, he stopped and ended his cultivation. He communicated with the burial of heaven in his mind. He asked, Burial of heaven, have you woken up? You have been recuperating for so long. Have you recovered your strength? Ever since he fought with the demon emperor, the burial of heaven's strength had been greatly damaged. For the past few months, he had been sleeping in the Kenshin tomb. The burial of heaven replied concisely, It's nothing serious. That's good. Ji Tianqing responded. Then he asked doubtfully, Burial of heaven, Just now you asked me to change the direction of my cultivation. What do you mean? The Burial of Heaven said in a deep voice. The martial Tao is like the sword Tao. You must have the determination and will to move forward courageously. Sometimes you must take an unconventional path. You are now cultivating in seclusion to strengthen your martial Tao foundation and increase your strength. Hopefully, you can break through to Sky Origin stage smoothly. This is the right path of the martial Tao. It is also one of the ways to break through to Sky Origin stage. However, your cultivation method of dripping water to penetrate a stone really consumes too much time. Maybe after 3 to 5 years of cultivation, you will be able to break through to the Sky Yuan stage. But you don't have that much time. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and agreed. That's right. I will challenge Long Yunxiao in the Apocalypse Heaven Pagoda in half a month. That battle is not only related to my and Yunyao's future, but also whether I can enter the Monarch Mansion. It is even related to my life and death. I only have half a month, but I can only win, not lose. The Burial of Heaven said loudly, since you only have half a month, all the more you should try. You have cultivated the 8th level of the Sword Heart in advance. Now, your body is comparable to a Sky Origin stage cultivator. If you want to break through to Sky Origin stage, you should think about it carefully. What is the difference between you and a Sky Origin stage cultivator? What do you lack? Ji Tianqing was stunned. He answered without hesitation, my body has reached Sky Origin stage. What I lack is true essence. A Sky Origin stage cultivator can control the power of the 5 elements, but I have mastered the true essence of metal and fire. The Burial of Heaven said in a gratified tone, that's right. You really understood it. Chapter 5:14. Burial of Heaven's pointers and suggestions allowed Ji Tianqing to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Although this method went against common sense and sounded rather inconceivable. Ordinary martial artists would first reach the Sky Origin stage before being able to cultivate true essence of other attributes and gradually master the power of the 5 elements. However, Buried Heaven's method was the exact opposite of what was expected. Ji Tianqing had to cultivate the power of the 5 elements first before breaking through to the Sky Origin stage. Ordinary martial artists would never dare to attempt such a thing that went against common sense and reversed the cultivation sequence. Once an accident occurred, it would cause damage to the martial arts foundation. In the best-case scenario, one's cultivation would drop greatly, and in the worst-case scenario, one would go mad and lose one's cultivation overnight. But Ji Tianqing dared to attempt it and had the corresponding qualifications to take the risk and cultivate the power of the 5 elements. Because he was different. Although he had not reached the Sky Origin stage, his body was already comparable to a Sky Origin stage martial artist and could withstand the power of the 5 elements. Moreover, he had already mastered the power of metal and fire, so he had a certain foundation. After making up his mind, Ji Tianqing thanked Burial of Heaven. Burial of Heaven, thank you for your reminder and pointers. After speaking, he suddenly thought of something and asked, oh right, Burial of Heaven, did Kenshin also use this strange method when he broke through to the Sky Origin stage? Burial of Heaven said in a low voice, how extraordinary is Kenshin's talent? The bottleneck and martial arts shackles to ordinary martial artists were a smooth path to him. Moreover, when I had consciousness, he had already reached a stage that was close to God, so how would I know what happened to him when he was young? Ji Tianqing was rather shocked when he heard this, and his heart was filled with envy. How good would it be if I could have Kenshin's extraordinary talent? Burial of Heaven said solemnly, in less than a year, you've reached the 9th level of the Origin Core stage from the True Origin stage and are about to step into the Sky Origin stage. In the entire profound Sky continent, there's probably no one who can compare to such a shocking talent. Even compared to Kenshin, you're slightly better. Kid, you should be content. Ji Tianqing replied, that may be the case, but I'm pressed for time. I can't delay any longer. I just want to reach the Sky Origin stage as soon as possible and defeat Long Yunxiao. Only then will I be able to solve all my problems. Buried Heaven responded and then fell silent. He did not say another word. Ji Tianqing also got up and left the secret room to find the Beast King. A quarter of an hour later, he entered the house where the Beast King lived. The Beast King was currently teaching Qian Yu a set of cultivation techniques. Seeing Ji Tianqing arrive, he led him into the guest hall for a chat. After the two of them sat down in the guest hall, the The Beast King sized him up and smiled. Tianqing, you've been cultivating in seclusion for 10 days. Your strength has improved again. Tianqing cupped his hands in greeting and said, Senior, I've come to find you because of the matter of cultivation. I'd like to ask you a question. The Beast King nodded and said, Speak frankly if you have any doubts. This old man will definitely tell you everything he knows. Tianqing didn't beat around the bush and said directly, Senior, I've been stuck at the 9th level of the Origin Core stage for a few months and have been deeply shackled by the martial Tao. I've been unable to break through to the Sky Origin stage for a long time. After thinking about it, I've decided to take a different path and cultivate the 5-element energy in advance and borrow this method to break through the shackles. The Beast King instantly raised his brows and said with a surprised expression, Nephew actually wants to use this method? This method goes against common sense and doesn't conform to the common sense of martial Tao cultivation. This old man once heard that some martial artists were unable to break through to the Sky Origin stage for a long time and wanted to use this method to break through. But none of those martial artists succeeded. Their fleshly bodies were completely unable to withstand the 5-element energy, and the final outcome was either death or injury. Nephew, have you thought it through? Tianqing said with a solemn expression, Senior, I'm naturally clear about this. But don't worry, I'm confident that I can withstand the 5-element energy and there won't be any accidents. The Beast King frowned and weighed the pros and cons for a moment, then nodded and said, That's right. Nephew, your innate talent is extraordinary and different from ordinary people. You should have hoped to succeed and create a miracle. Tianqing continued, Senior, now that I only have half a month's time, do you have any methods to allow me to quickly cultivate the 5-element energy? A method to quickly cultivate the 5-element energy? The Beast King frowned and pondered. He pondered for a moment and said with a serious expression, In this old man's opinion, why don't you try to cultivate together with Qian Yu and study a joint attack technique? Qian Yu is your beast pet, and if you two practice and communicate more, you can achieve the effect of telepathy and have a tacit understanding of each other. If the two of you can cooperate so closely that you can borrow each other's strength and join forces to attack together, you'll be able to indirectly possess each other's strength. Hearing the Beast King's words, Tianqing and Qian Yu were stunned for a moment. Tianqing looked at Qian Yu and nodded. That's right. Qian Yu has the water and ice attributes, which is exactly what I need. Senior, please teach us how to cultivate a joint attack technique. The Beast King smiled. He took out a book from his interspatial ring and handed it to Tianqing. Nephew, this is a joint attack secret technique that I've spent decades researching. It's called the Spirit Channeling Heaven Technique. Tianqing took the book with both hands and bowed to the Beast King. Senior, you are willing to teach me all of your life's work. I can't thank you enough. The Beast King stroked his beard and nodded with a smile. No need to be so polite. You can count this on your master. Next time I see him, I will ask for more wine from him. Tianqing smiled and said goodbye to the Beast King. He left with Qian Yu. He didn't start cultivating right away after he returned to his residence. Before he started cultivating, he had something important to do. He wrote a letter and asked White Ape to send it to the Forest of Divine Monuments to the Emperor's mansion. He had already told God Master He Yu and the other princes that he wanted to challenge Long Yunxiao. However, this matter required a formal process. He had to hand in the letter in order to be formal and serious enough. After dealing with the letter, Tianqing pulled Qian Yu into a secret room to study and comprehend the spirit communication. Of course, Qian Yu also wanted to study and cultivate with him. This spirit communication was the culmination of the Beast King's life's work. It required both martial artists and spiritual beasts to cultivate at the same time. The two of them had to cultivate and deepen their tacit understanding through cultivation so that they could work together and gather their powers as one. Even if Tianqing hadn't mastered the water attribute, he could borrow Qian Yu's power to use the water attribute vital essence. Qian Yu was the same. He could borrow Tianqing's power to use the metal and fire attribute vital essence. Although the spirit communication was very profound and complicated, it was difficult to understand. However, with Tianqing's innate talent and aptitude, he quickly comprehended this secret technique. He and Qian Yu understood the secret technique and tried to cultivate it. Please recommend me. Chapter 5:15. Inside the Monarch Mansion. At the peak of a mountain, There was a black feather palace in the sea of clouds formed by 5 colored spiritual clouds. At this moment, a huge pitch-black vulture flew through the sea of colorful clouds at lightning speed and landed outside the gate of the black feather palace. A guard in black armor jumped down from the back of the spiritual eagle. He held a golden invitation and quickly walked into the black feather palace. In the spacious and bright hall, Divine Master Black Feather was sitting cross-legged in the hall. He was cultivating with his eyes closed. The guard in black armor quickly walked into the hall and held the golden invitation respectfully. He knelt down on one knee and reported, "Divine Master Black Feather, I have an invitation." God's sovereign Black Feather opened his eyes that were as sharp as lightning. He looked at the golden invitation expressionlessly. He didn't seem to move at all, but with his invisible soul power, he wrapped the golden invitation and flew it to him with a whoosh. He opened the gilded greeting card. After reading the contents, his originally cold eyes flashed with a trace of ripples. However, he did not comment on the contents of the invitation. He closed the invitation and ordered the guard in black armor calmly, "Go to the Yunxiao Palace and ask Long Yunxiao to come and see me." "Yes." The guard in black armor cupped his hands and walked out of the hall. He stepped on the black spiritual eagle and flew toward the Yunxiao Palace. About an hour later, the guard in black armor returned with a young man in a golden robe. It was Long Yunxiao. Long Yunxiao entered the main hall and respectfully bowed to God Sage Heiyu. Prince Long Yunxiao greets Divine Master Black Feather. "Do you have any orders?" Divine Master Black Feather flicked his finger, and the golden invitation flew over a dozen meters and landed in front of Long Yunxiao. "This is the invitation that Ji Tianqing just handed over. In 15 days, he will challenge you on the Apocalypse Tower. According to the rules of the Monarch Mansion, the challenge has to be held on the Monarch stage. A divine master from the Monarch Mansion will be present to supervise. I remember that is the day you choose your heavenly concubine. There is a conflict between the dates. I plan to postpone the challenge for a few days. What do you think?" Long Yunxiao raised his eyebrows and said solemnly, "Divine Master Heiyu, there is no need to postpone the date. I have already made plans and preparations. When the time comes, I will not go to the Apocalypse Pagoda. I will hold it on the Emperor's platform." The 3 heavenly concubine candidates have all arrived in the central continent. Divine Master Black Feather nodded slightly and said, "All right, since you have decided, I will make the arrangements. If there's nothing else, you may leave and prepare." Long Yunxiao bowed and walked out of the hall. After leaving the Black Feather Palace, he flew across the sky at lightning speed, heading towards one of the peaks in the mountains. About an hour later, he landed on a lofty mountain and arrived at the gate of Yunyao Palace. Without a doubt, this mountain peak and the magnificent palace were Yunyao's abode. Within the monarch manor, more than 50 princes each occupied a mountain range, a mountain peak, and a palace. The names of the mountains and palaces were basically decided by the names of the princes. Long Yunxiao walked towards the gate of the palace. The guards at the gate immediately stopped him and bowed. "Your Majesty, please wait. If you need to see my lady, please allow me to inform her." There were more than 100 guards and maids in Yunyao Palace. These people were all arranged by the Cloud Spirit Palace. They were also the guards of honor when Yunyao went out. The guards and maids in the palace all knew Long Yunxiao. They also knew that he was deeply in love with their lady. Naturally, they did not dare to neglect or offend him. Long Yunxiao nodded slightly and said calmly, "Go and report to Yao Yao. Tell her that I have important news to tell her. Please wait for a moment." A black armored guard quickly turned and went into the palace to report the news. Long Yunxiao stood at the gate and waited for about half an hour before the guard returned. The guard hesitated for a moment before he braced himself and said, "Your Majesty, my lady is cultivating in seclusion. It is not convenient for her to see any guests. Please go back." Long Yunxiao smiled and said calmly, "In the past 2 months, I have come to find Yao Yao more than 10 times. Every time, she replied like this. She doesn't want to see me. Does she not even bother to change her excuse?" The guard was filled with fear. He lowered his head stiffly and did not dare to reply. Long Yunxiao continued, "Go and report to her again. Tell her that the news I want to tell her is related to Ji Tianqing." The guard was stunned. He did not know who Ji Tianqing was. However, he did not say much. He went into the palace again and repeated Long Yunxiao's words word for word. This time, when the guard walked out of the palace and came to the gate, Yun Yao finally appeared. She was dressed in a long white dress. She walked out of the palace with light steps and walked towards the gate with an indifferent expression. Multicolored spiritual clouds lingered around her body, making her look like a fairy who had descended to the mortal world. She was pure and holy, pure and noble. Long Yun Shao gazed at her affectionately, a hint of gentleness surging in his eyes. After a while, Yun Yao came to the gate and stood 10 steps away from him. She said indifferently, "Long Yun Shao, if you have something to say it here." Long Yun Shao forced a smile and sighed. "Yao Yao, I thought that after you entered the monarch mansion, I would be able to see you every day and night. I never thought that I would have to use Ji Tianqing's name to see you." Sai. Yun Yao said with a calm expression, "If you just want to trick me into seeing you, then please go back." After saying that, she turned around and was about to leave. Long Yun Shao quickly said, "Wait. I really have something to say to you this time." Just now, the monarch mansion received Ji Tianqing's invitation. Divine Teacher He Yu also summoned me to discuss this matter. In 15 days, I've decided to choose a heavenly consort on the monarch stage and have a duel with Ji Tianqing in public. Yun Yao looked at him quietly. She didn't say anything, and there wasn't the slightest ripple in her eyes. Obviously, no matter where Long Yun Shao chose a heavenly consort, she was indifferent. Long Yun Shao smiled and said gently, "Yao Yao, choosing you as a heavenly consort on the monarch stage is not as grand as holding a ceremony on the Apocalypse Tower. I know that my decision has made you feel wronged. However, I will do my best to arrange everything. Even if the ceremony is held on the monarch stage, it will be grand and sacred. I will not be rude." Yun Yao said calmly, "This is your business. It has nothing to do with me. You don't have to explain it to me." Long Yun Shao was still smiling. He said with a touched tone, "Yao Yao, thank you for your understanding. I already know that you are the most reasonable and considerate. Don't worry. Half a year later, when you officially marry into the imperial court, I will make it up to you and hold the grandest ceremony for you." However, before he could finish, Yun Yao turned around and left. Chapter 5:16. Time flew by and 15 days passed in the blink of an eye. Early in the morning, Ji Tianqing and Qian Yu finished their cultivation and walked out of the secret chamber. Ji Tianqing stood at the door of the secret chamber with a smile on his face. He said in a serious tone, "The day has finally arrived. Today, I have something very important to do." Qian Yu looked at him with a smile and said playfully, "Old Ji, you seem to be in a good mood. Are you confident?" "Of course." Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. He then reached out and patted Qian Yu's head. "Qian Yu, I really have to thank you this time." Qian Yu smiled proudly and said proudly, "Of course. I am the Honorable Heavenly Fox. However, if we really want to talk about it, both of us have to thank the old man Beast King. His spirit communication heaven technique is really amazing." As soon as Qian Yu finished speaking, Yan Er's voice came from outside the room. "Senior brother Tianqing, have you come out of seclusion?" Ji Tianqing walked to the door and saw a few people standing outside. Yan Er, Ji Ku, and the Beast King were all there. They were looking at him with anticipation. "Tianqing, how's your cultivation of the spiritualization technique coming along?" "Senior brother Tianqing, is today the day you challenge the emperor?" "Brother Tianqing, are you ready?" Apparently, the three of them knew that Ji Tianqing and Long Yun Shao were going to challenge each other. Ji Tianqing smiled and nodded. He said to the three of them, "I am ready. Today, I will settle all my grudges in the Apocalyptic Tower and enter the Imperial Mansion." The Beast King smiled and stroked his beard. He said, "Tianqing, today's challenge will not be held in the Apocalyptic Tower. It will be held in the Imperial Stage." Half a month ago, the Imperial Mansion and the Emperor announced that the location of the challenge will be held in the Imperial Stage. The news has already spread throughout Zhong State City. Today, the Imperial Stage will be very lively and it will attract tens of thousands of people. Imperial Stage? Ji Tianqing frowned. He was surprised by the news. However, he did not care about it. He smiled and said, "Whether it is the Apocalyptic Tower or the Imperial Stage, the result will be the same. Let's go." Ji Tianqing led Qian Yu, Yan Er, Ji Ku, the Beast King, and the others and left the Imperial Stage. Of the imperial stage's imperial stage. The monarch stage was a 1,000-meter tall, ancient and sacred altar. This altar was located in the enormous plaza at the center of the city. It was Central Continent City's core and holy land. Its status was lofty, dignified, and divine. Ever since the monarch mansion was established, the monarch stage had always stood tall in Central State City. It already had several thousand years of history. Of the imperial. In addition, every martial Dao genius who wanted to enter the monarch mansion had to challenge an imperial prince on the monarch stage. Every time a genius challenged an imperial prince on the imperial stage, it would cause a stir in the city. Tens of thousands of people would gather around the imperial stage to watch. Regardless of whether the challenge was successful or not, the news would spread to the 4 continents. If someone succeeded in the challenge, they would be able to enter the imperial mansion and become famous in the eyes of the people of Zhongzhou City. An hour later, Ji Tianqing and the others arrived at the center of the city. Before they even entered the square, they saw that the huge square with a circumference of 10 miles was already filled with a sea of people. As far as the eye could see, the entire square had been completely filled. There were people everywhere, and it was a scene of extreme congestion. However, the commoners were still filled with excitement. They discussed excitedly and waited in anticipation. The imperial square was filled with people. Even the buildings and streets around the imperial square were filled with people. When Ji Tianqing saw the surging sea of people all around him, he couldn't help but be a little surprised. The imperial square is filled. Do the people of Zhongzhou like to watch a show? Yan Er was also shocked. He exclaimed, "Senior Beast King, these are not just tens of thousands of people. I think there are at least 100,000 people." The Beast King smiled and nodded. "That's right. Today is a special day. Not only is it the day Tianqing challenges the imperial prince, it is also the day the imperial prince chooses his imperial concubine." After the news spread, it caused a stir in the whole of Zhongzhou City. The people of all races want to watch the show, so there are so many people here. Speaking of this, he looked at Ji Tianqing with a smile. He said with expectation, "Tianqing, if you want to make a name for yourself, your name will shake the world. You must seize this opportunity today." Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a solemn expression, "I understand." After saying this, he led everyone through the crowd and walked towards the imperial stage in the middle of the square. Although the square was crowded, everyone was a martial arts expert. They released a trace of true qi without leaving a trace and pushed the people in front of them away. At first glance, it looked like wherever they passed, the people nearby took the initiative to step back. Not long after, everyone arrived at the center of the square and stopped in front of the imperial stage. Ji Tianqing raised his head and looked at the monarch stage with a calm expression. He saw that the imperial stage was 1,000 meters tall. It was made of an unknown mysterious stone, and it was grayish-brown in color. The surface of the imperial stage was covered with mottled traces of wind and frost. It revealed an ancient aura, as well as a majestic divine aura. The imperial stage was in the shape of a pyramid. The bottom was round and the top was round. On the left and right sides of the imperial stage, there were 2 sky ascension stairs made of dark golden bricks. The 2 sky ascension stairs had 999 steps, directly connecting the ground to the imperial stage at the top. The imperial stage was 1,000 meters high and had a radius of several hundred meters. It was surrounded by grayish-white jade railings, and there were 36 strange beast statues. Those railings and the majestic strange beast statues were the decorations of the imperial stage, and also the foundation of the mysterious array. Today, the imperial prince would choose his future imperial concubine in front of everyone. It was a joyous day. Therefore, the white jade railings around the imperial stage were hung with vermilion lanterns, wrapped with countless red silk and silk. In addition, there were more than 30 black armored guards from the imperial residence. They stood motionless around the imperial stage, exuding a solemn and dignified aura. The imperial stage was solemn and grand. Below the imperial stage, nearly 100,000 people of the central state had gathered. It was extremely lively and noisy. All of this caused Ji Tianqing's expression to turn solemn. The depths of his eyes burned with a strong desire to fight. He looked up at the imperial stage and silently clenched his fists. His eyes were firm and persistent. He said in a confident tone, Today's battle is about the future and life of the people. Chapter 5:17. Just as Ji Tianxing and the others were waiting in silence and the 100,000 people were discussing, in the sky not far away, a five-colored stream of light suddenly appeared. Swoosh! The five-colored stream of light streaked across the sky like a rainbow and arrived above the square in the blink of an eye. The five-colored light stopped in mid-air and revealed a tall and mighty figure. This person was a young man of about 30 years old. His face was resolute and handsome, and his thick eyebrows were slanted into his temples. His eyes were bright and filled with a domineering aura. He was wearing a luxurious green robe embroidered with golden dragons and phoenixes. It was inlaid with silver edges and had a pair of heaven-ascending fire-treading boots on his feet. The countless commoners and martial practitioners on the square below all looked up at him. Soon, the human martial artists recognized his identity. They all revealed excited expressions and began to discuss among themselves. Look, it's the Crown Prince, Duanmu Yulong. It's really him. I expected that many crown princes would come to watch the battle today. I didn't expect him to be the first to arrive. Duanmu Yulong, the 9th crown prince of the imperial residence. He is one of the most outstanding crown princes of the human race. He is indeed in high spirits. Many human martial artists admired Duanmu Yulong and saw him as the pride of the human race. Many human women, regardless of whether they were married or not, were looking at Duanmu Yulong with shining eyes, revealing deep adoration. Only some of the people of the demon race and the water race had heard of Duanmu Yulong's name. Those who didn't know the inside story asked their companions about Duanmu Yulong's background. What is the background of that Duanmu Yulong? He seems to be a crown prince? But seeing the reaction of the human race, it seems that this crown prince is very famous? You don't even know Duanmu Yulong? He is the 9th crown prince of the imperial residence and the eldest son of the Duanmu family. He is the future head of the family. The Duanmu family? Could it be the Duanmu family, one of the 3 great families of the human race in Central State? No wonder. The 3 great families of the human race in Central State are all ancient families with thousands of years of history. Their strength and status are second only to the imperial court. Even if that Duanmu Yulong is not an emperor's son, his status is noble enough. Just as everyone was discussing spiritedly, another 5-colored spiritual light appeared in the sky not far away. The multicolored radiance arrived above the square and stopped 100 steps away from Duanmu Yulong. The 5-colored brilliance dissipated, revealing a tall and slender figure. At first glance, this white-robed figure had a graceful posture and a slender figure, like a peerless beauty. However, this person was a human youth. His cheeks were fair and delicate. His brows were picturesque. His thin lips were lightly pursed, and his eyes were as clear as 2 deep pools. He was even more seductive and beautiful than those famous peerless beauties in the Central State. This person's beauty was enough to move the hearts of men and make countless women jealous and feel ashamed of their own inferiority. He wore a blue robe that was similarly embroidered with a dragon and phoenix design and cloud-patterned golden edges. His attire and aura were in no way inferior to Duanmu Yulong's. Moreover, he had a string of grayish-white beads in his left hand and a green jade folding fan in his right hand. He was dressed like a distinguished and elegant scholar. As he waved the green jade folding fan in his right hand, one could see a star map engraved on the front of the fan. On the back of the fan, there were 4 simple and vigorous words. Murong Lingfeng. When the countless commoners in the square saw Murong Lingfeng's appearance, they immediately burst into a clamor of discussion. Murong Lingfeng is here too. The 7th emperor's son of the monarch mansion, the eldest son of the Murong family, the #1 genius. Today is the day of the emperor's heavenly consort selection. The descendants of the Duanmu family and the Murong family are the first to arrive. It looks like these 2 families are very close to the imperial court. Murong Lingfeng's ranking and strength are both higher than Duanmu Yulong's. Although this person is the most handsome man in the Central State, his methods are even more terrifying. It is said that in the monarch mansion, the human emperors are divided into 3 factions. Murong Lingfeng is the leader of one of the factions. The 100,000 ancient martial art practitioners and commoners in the square were discussing excitedly. Murong Lingfeng stood in the sky for a long time, ignoring everyone below. He calmly looked at Duanmu Yulong with a smile on his lips. He cupped his hands and greeted him. I thought I was early enough, but I didn't expect you to be even more impatient. Duanmu Yulong also cupped his hands and replied with a calm expression. Today is the day of the Emperor's heavenly consort selection. He wants to choose Yun Yao as his heavenly consort. How can I not be present? The two of them were talking through their spiritual sense, so no one else could hear them. Murong Lingfeng revealed a playful smile and said, Duanmu, you want to personally watch your beloved marry someone else as a concubine? Is this also a kind of cultivation? Duanmu Yulong glanced at him expressionlessly and sternly said, Brother Murong, let's not talk about the past. I only admired Yun Yao when she was young. After she left the central state for many years, I have long forgotten about her. Moreover, as the eldest son of the Duanmu family, how can I marry the daughter of the Yun family? Even if we become husband and wife, it will still end in tragedy. Murong Lingfeng didn't give him any face and mocked him with a mocking smile. Hee, Brother Duanmu, you're thinking too much, aren't you? Yun Yao's temperament is as cold as ice. She's unreasonable and doesn't know how to talk about love. You still want to marry her? Wake up. In my opinion, the Duanmu family doesn't allow you to interact with the Yun family. You can't compete with Long Yunxiao, so you gave up on your obsession, right? Duanmu Yulong raised his brows and retorted with a smile. That's right. I can't compete with Long Yunxiao, but can Brother Murong compete with him? That sister you're thinking about is rude to you, but she wants to marry Long Yunxiao. That's right, you haven't seen in Suwen for many years, right? When Long Yunxiao chooses his heavenly consort, you'll be able to see her on the monarch stage and show off her charm to Long Yunxiao. Murong Lingfeng's face immediately darkened and the corner of his mouth fiercely twitched. He gently waved his green jade fan and expressionlessly said, Suwen isn't that kind of person. It's just that the Yin family wants to climb the social ladder and rely on the imperial court. Suwen has always been kind and filial. She doesn't want to go against her parents' orders. After today, when Long Yunxiao chooses Yun Yao as his consort, I'll let Suwen stay in the central state. The two of them chatted for a while and then fell silent. After a while, Duanmu Yulong broke the silence. He no longer exchanged sarcastic remarks with Murong Lingfeng. His gaze was gloomy and his tone was solemn. No matter what, once Yun Yao becomes a heavenly consort today, our plans will have to change. Murong Lingfeng also waved his fan and said with a serious expression, These past few years, Long Yunxiao has been secretly helping the Yun family and obstructing our plans. It's indeed a bit troublesome. Now that he's taking Yun Yao as his consort, he can openly support the Yun family. When the time comes, the Yun family will be able to recover. Duanmu Yulong nodded and his lips curled into a playful smile. He said, Brother Murong, do you still remember that brat called Ji Tianqing? Of course I remember. That person wants to challenge Long Yunxiao today. Murong Lingfeng slightly nodded. Duanmu Yulong sneered. That day, Ji Tianqing barged into the monarch mansion and caused a disturbance in front of all the princes. I saw that his expression was a bit strange when he talked to Yun Yao. Long Yunxiao's reaction was also a bit strange. I feel that this person's relationship with Yun Yao isn't shallow. It's definitely not as simple as a martial sister and a martial brother. Chapter 5:18. Duanmu Yulong and Murong Lingfeng stood proudly in the sky against the wind. The two of them communicated with their spiritual senses for a while and then fell silent, waiting for the show to begin. Not long after, streaks of 5-colored spiritual light were converging from all directions in the sky. These people were the princes of the monarch mansion. Most of them were from the human clan, and only a few were from the demon clan and the water clan. Some of them flew with the wind, some of them rode on majestic spiritual beasts, and a few princes rode on flying artifacts. More than 20 princes from the 3 clans arrived and stopped in the sky above the square. Everyone spread out and stood proudly in the sky, looking down at the emperor stage below, as well as the 100,000 martial artists and people. Every time a crown prince arrived, the people in the square would burst into a burst of discussion and cheers. All the commoners and martial artists were filled with excitement. After all, the princes of the monarch mansion were very noble and rarely showed up. All of them were very mysterious. Every few years, when someone challenged a prince, the princes would come to watch the battle and show up in front of the people. To countless people, being able to see more than 20 princes with their own eyes today was not a waste of their lives. On the south side of the square, there was a majestic pagoda that was nearly 1,000 meters tall. In a room on the top floor of the pagoda, 2 human clan powerhouses were standing by the window, silently watching the square and the emperor stage not far away. Of the 2 human clan powerhouses, one was a middle-aged man with a resolute face and a righteous aura. The other was an old man with white hair, but he had white hair and a youthful face. He was hale and hearty, and he had a sage-like temperament. Although both of them were wearing ordinary clothes, they did not wear luxurious clothes, jade crowns, or ornaments. However, both of them had a domineering and majestic aura that looked down on all living beings in the world. There was no doubt that both of them were very noble and had a high status. The white-haired old man looked at the situation in the square, stroked his beard, and said in a low voice, "Your Majesty, with our status, will be a joke if others find out that we've disguised ourselves to watch the Emperor's concubine selection." The middle-aged man was the Emperor. Hearing this, he couldn't help but frown and said in a low voice, "Imperial tutor, as long as you don't tell anyone, who will know that we were here? This Emperor's son is going to choose a concubine in front of everyone. What's wrong with this Emperor coming to watch?" The Imperial tutor stroked his beard and said with an amiable smile, "Yes, your Majesty is right." However, the Emperor favored Yun Yao, and the Yun family had already agreed to this matter. This matter has already been decided, so why would the imperial monarch need to personally come and watch? The arch frowned slightly and said in a serious tone, 2 months ago, I had already made arrangements for the Enlightening Heaven Pagoda. He did not expect that Cloud Sky would actually change his mind at the last minute and place the ceremony on the monarch stage. If the ceremony was too simple, it would definitely make the Yun family feel dissatisfied, and they would inevitably feel that they were neglected and looked down upon. This emperor has asked Cloud Sky, but he said that he has his own plans. This emperor wants to see with his own eyes what exactly he wants to do. The imperial tutor frowned and thought for a moment before comforting. The emperor is probably doing this because he wants to follow the rules of the emperor residence. After all, there is a kid called Ji Tianxing who wants to challenge the emperor, and this challenge must be held on the emperor stage. Perhaps the emperor wants to defeat that kid first before choosing a concubine. This way, it will be more festive and lively. The emperor was silent for a moment before nodding and saying, "It's good that Cloud Sky has his own ideas and plans. However, this emperor has a bad premonition in his heart. I just hope that nothing goes wrong during today's ceremony. The imperial court cannot afford to lose face like this." The imperial tutor waved his hand and said with a smile, "Your Majesty, don't worry. With the emperor's strength and methods, there won't be any problems." The emperor didn't say anything else. He looked at the emperor stage calmly and waited quietly. Not long after, 28 princes had gathered around the emperor stage. 100,000 cultivators and commoners had gathered in the plaza, and the entire plaza was completely packed. In the palaces and pavilions around the plaza, there were people from various races and powerful forces who were silently watching the emperor stage. At this moment, in the sky above the forest of divine monuments, a black stream of light flew towards the emperor stage as fast as lightning. That black stream of light was like a pair of huge wings. It looked very mysterious and contained an aura that made one's heart palpitate. Swish! In just a few breaths, that pair of black light wings crossed thousands of meters in the sky and landed on the emperor stage. A tall and thin figure appeared and stood proudly in the middle of the emperor stage. This black-robed middle-aged man with a cold expression and a mysterious and majestic aura was Divine Master Blackfeather. He stood on the emperor stage and looked down at the plaza with an indifferent expression. His entire body emitted an invisible divine soul pressure that immediately shrouded the entire plaza. The 100,000 cultivators and commoners in the plaza all felt chills all over their bodies and their souls trembled slightly. In the blink of an eye, the 100,000 people quieted down and looked up at Divine Master Blackfeather with reverence and worship. This was the power and majesty of a soul refinement realm expert. If it was in a mundane kingdom, a soul refinement realm expert would be able to fight against 1,000,000 soldiers. When the plaza fell into silence and there was no more noise, Divine Master Blackfeather spoke in an indifferent voice. The Emperor residence has been passed down for ages and has always been established and governed by martial arts. Now that martial arts is flourishing and geniuses of various races are emerging in large numbers, this is the fortune of all races in the world. Divine Master Blackfeather's voice wasn't loud, but it was cold and majestic, as if he was announcing an announcement. However, his voice contained the power of the divine soul. It enveloped a radius of 10 miles and was clearly transmitted into everyone's mind. Today, the genius of the human race, Ji Tianqing, will challenge the 53rd prince, Long Yunxiao, on the emperor stage. May the heavens bear witness, the ancestors of the emperor residents bear witness, and the millions of commoners bear witness. Divine Master Blackfeather solemnly said the words, bear witness, and even bowed to the heavens, looking extremely sacred. Seeing this scene, everyone in the plaza was nervous. They stared at the emperor stage with their eyes wide open and their hearts were filled with anticipation. Divine Master Blackfeather spoke again in a deep voice. I, Blackfeather, will be presiding over today's assessment. Now, may the challenger, Ji Tianqing, please ascend the emperor stage. As his voice fell, Ji Tianqing, who was in the crowd below the stage, turned into a golden flowing light and flew up to the sky with a swoosh, landing on the emperor stage. Instantly, the gazes of the 100,000 people in the square all landed on Ji Tianqing. None of the commoners and cultivators of various races knew him, let alone heard of his name. Everyone was filled with curiosity as they sized him up and discussed in low voices. Chapter 519. Ji Tianqing stood on the monarch stage with a calm expression, as if nothing had happened. Although there were 100,000 people on the square looking at him, countless people were whispering to each other. Some were looking at him suspiciously, some were teasing him, and some were mocking him with disdain. All sorts of voices surged into his ears like a torrent. However, he didn't have any stage fright or fear, nor was he excited. His emotions were as calm as his expression. He waited quietly on the monarch stage. His target was only Long Yunxiao. As for the 100,000 people on the square and the more than 20 princes in the sky, they were all ignored by him. At this moment, Divine Master Blackfeather said loudly, Now let's welcome Prince Long Yunxiao to the stage. As his voice fell, a colorful spiritual light flew out from one of the palaces at the edge of the square. Swoosh! The colorful spiritual light streaked across the sky. After a few breaths, it passed through half of the square and landed on the monarch stage. As the colorful light faded, a young man in a golden robe appeared. This man was tall and handsome. He exuded a dignified and noble aura. He was the emperor, Long Yunxiao. Long Yunxiao looked at Ji Tianqing, who was 100 steps away, and said indifferently, Ji Tianqing, I have been waiting for this day for a long time. Ji Tianqing stared at him and said calmly, I have been waiting for this day for a long time too. After today, I hope you will still remember what you said half a year ago. Long Yunxiao frowned and sneered. He said proudly, Today, you will lose for sure. Moreover, you will not live past today. Ji Tianqing said confidently, The one who will lose for sure is you. Then let's wait and see. Long Yunxiao narrowed his eyes, the corner of his mouth holding a thick sneer. At the same time, Divine Master Blackfeather waved his palms and released thousands of colorful lights. The lights were shot into the railings and strange beast statues around the monarch stage. The defensive array of the monarch stage was activated. A colorful light barrier with a radius of a few hundred meters appeared and enveloped the entire monarch stage. The palm-thick translucent light shield actually had a very strong defense. Cultivators below the soul refining stage, not even a sky origin stage cultivator could destroy it. In this way, no matter how intense the battle between Ji Tianqing and Long Yunxiao was on the monarch stage, the shockwaves from the battle wouldn't spread out and harm the commoners in the plaza. After activating the defensive array, God Mentor Blackfeather announced loudly, I hereby announce that the challenge begins now. After saying that, his figure flashed and passed through the defensive formation, flying high into the sky. He stood in the sky, overlooking the entire arena from above, supervising this challenge. Ji Tianqing and Long Yunxiao no longer hesitated. They immediately launched their attacks. Long Yunxiao's palm flashed, and a golden sword appeared. It was the Nine-Cloud Sword. He held the Nine-Cloud Sword in his hand and unleashed all of his power. The blade of the sword lit up with dazzling 5-colored spiritual light, which condensed into a huge sword light that was 10 meters long. Soaring sword! Long Yunxiao shouted in a low voice as he swung the Nine-Cloud Sword towards Ji Tianqing. The 10-meter-long 5-colored sword light suddenly pierced through the sky like lightning and arrived in front of Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing was already prepared. He took out the Black Dragon Sword and brazenly unsheathed it to meet Long Yunxiao. Soaring dragon from the ninth heaven. He held the scabbard in his left hand and the hilt of the black dragon sword in his right hand. He pulled out the black dragon sword and slashed at Long Yunxiao. Swoosh! The moment the black dragon sword came out of the scabbard, a dazzling cold light tore through the sky, bursting with an extremely sharp sword intent. The 10-meter-long dazzling sword light condensed into the shadow of a divine dragon. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws as it pounced at Long Yunxiao. Not only that, Qianyu also released the surging power of the ice attribute. She used the secret skill of the spirit communication technique to join forces with Ji Tianxing. The flickering shadow of the divine dragon, after fusing with the power of the ice attribute, immediately turned into an ice-blue dragon. Its power was doubled. Roar! The sacred and majestic ice dragon let out a resounding dragon roar. With the power to destroy everything, it pounced at Long Yunxiao. In the next moment, the huge ice dragon and the five-colored sword light collided fiercely, exploding with an earth-shattering sound. Boom! The five-colored sword light slashed out by the nine-cloud sword was shattered on the spot by the ice dragon. It turned into light fragments that filled the sky and quickly dissipated. The power of the ice dragon weakened a little, but it did not dissipate. It ruthlessly slashed at Long Yunxiao. Bang! In the dull loud sound, Long Yunxiao's figure was drowned by the ice-blue brilliance that filled the sky. The huge ice dragon fiercely slammed into the emperor platform, creating a huge crack in the black stone floor. Countless pieces of stone splashed out. Seeing this scene, the warriors and commoners in the square were shocked. They exclaimed in disbelief. No one would have thought that Long Yunxiao and Ji Tianxing would be at a disadvantage after exchanging just one blow. And that unknown Ji Tianxing actually had such powerful combat strength. Suddenly, those who were discussing and mocking Ji Tianxing immediately shut their mouths. Everyone put away their contempt. They had to look at Ji Tianxing seriously and reanalyze the result of this challenge. The expressions of the more than 20 princes in the square changed. They revealed complicated expressions. Murong Lingfeng's lips curled into a playful smile. He gently waved his green jade folding fan and said to himself, "This Ji Tianxing is a little interesting. I'm really looking forward to it." Not far away, Duanmu Yulong's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise. He whispered, "No wonder this kid dares to challenge Long Yunxiao. He has some strength." In addition, the other 20 princes also revealed surprised expressions. They stared at the emperor platform with interest. The princes originally thought that Ji Tianxing was no match for Long Yunxiao and would be defeated soon, just like the previous challengers. For countless years, almost every 1 or 2 years, there would be people challenging the princes, wanting to enter the monarch mansion. Those people were called martial arts geniuses in the four-way continent, but they were no match for the princes. They would often be defeated before long. There were even people who were thrown off the emperor platform, losing face in front of tens of thousands of commoners. A moment later, the ice-blue brilliance on the emperor platform that covered the sky dissipated. Under the gaze of 100,000 people, Long Yunxiao's figure appeared again. He stood on the emperor platform safe and sound, holding the nine-cloud sword in his hand and wearing a set of dark golden armor. This set of dark golden armor covered his entire body, revealing only a pair of eyes. There was also a pair of dark golden wings on his back, which made him look extraordinarily mighty. Moreover, there was a long and sharp black blade on the left arm of the armor. It emitted an extremely sharp aura that seemed to be able to cut the sky. Chapter 520. Long Yunxiao was wearing the God of War armor and his whole body was tightly protected. No one could tell whether he was injured or not. He stared at Ji Tianxing with cold eyes and said in a low voice, "Ji Tianxing, I haven't seen you for half a year and your strength has grown to such an extent. You really surprised this monarch. However, this monarch will not take it lightly and will never give you another chance." As his voice fell, he turned into a golden streamer, wielding the dragon teeth blade in his left arm and the nine-cloud sword in his right hand. He rushed toward Ji Tianxing as fast as an aurora. Dragon sword and thunderblade, chaotic world's mad martial art. Long Yunxiao let out a sonorous roar and his whole body burst out with a soaring fighting spirit. Dazzling Zidian thunder light gushed out of the dragon teeth blade and condensed into a huge Zidian blade light. The nine-cloud sword burst out with a bright golden light and turned into a 30-meter-long sacred golden dragon. Long Yunxiao obviously used his ultimate move. He held the thunderbolt in his left hand and manipulated the sacred golden dragon in his right hand. He instantly rushed in front of Ji Tianqing. Kill! Following his furious roar, the divine and berserk golden dragon, which seemed to have descended from the heavens, attacked Ji Tianqing from both sides. Suddenly, the entire monarch stage was shrouded in purple thunder light and dazzling golden light. It became dazzling and chaotic. Ji Tianqing's figure was submerged by the thunderbolt and the golden dragon, and immediately fell into a dangerous situation. At the critical moment, he put away the black dragon sword without hesitation and spread out a pair of golden wings in front of him to protect himself. Boom! The thunderbolt and the sacred golden dragon fell from the sky and fiercely blasted Ji Tianqing, causing a loud noise that shook the 9 heavens. He was blasted back hundreds of meters on the spot. His feet sank deep into the black stone floor before he stopped. The ground where he was originally standing had long been blasted by the thunderbolt and the golden dragon, creating a huge crater with a radius of tens of meters and numerous cracks. The incomparably violent energy formed a half-purple and half-golden shockwave that spread out in all directions and fiercely hit the defensive array of the monarch stage. The deafening sound reverberated on the monarch stage for a long time before dissipating. Long Yunxiao stood in the sky, looking down at Ji Tianqing. Seeing that he wasn't injured, he couldn't help narrowing his eyes. Ji Tianqing, you can actually block this monarch's ultimate move. Now, you are indeed qualified to be this monarch's opponent. Ji Tianqing also flapped his golden wings and stepped into the sky, standing 100 steps away from Long Yunxiao. He calmly looked at Long Yunxiao and coldly said, "Half a year ago that night, I told you that I was going to kill you. So what if he was the emperor? Half a year later, you might not be able to beat me. Today, I will make you recognize yourself and willingly withdraw." As soon as he finished speaking, his entire body ignited with a monstrous golden flame. His body merged with the flame, forming a giant golden sword that was more than 10 meters long. Shua! The huge golden sword carried a sharp power that could destroy everything as it shot towards Long Yunxiao like an aurora. The golden light that burst out from the huge sword formed a huge and incomparably powerful white tiger phantom. The white tiger opened its bloody mouth and stretched out a pair of huge sharp claws. With a violent and murderous momentum, it pounced towards Long Yunxiao. White Tiger Sacred Sword. At that moment, the monarch stage was filled with dazzling golden light as sword chi filled the sky. A sacred beast white tiger appeared out of thin air and let out an earth-shattering roar. Below the monarch stage, the hundreds of thousands of people were shocked and astonished. The strength that Ji Tianqing displayed had refreshed everyone's understanding of him again and again. Even the princes in the sky were staring intently at the emperor platform, their hearts filled with anticipation. Long Yunxiao's eyes flashed with graveness and fear. He also went all out to display his ultimate move to block the attack of the White Tiger Sacred Sword. Moonwalk Qing Tsong, Mysterious Sky Demon Suppression. He held the dragon teeth saber in his left hand and the 9-cloud sword in his right hand. A pair of golden wings unfolded behind him as his body burst out with 5-colored spiritual light. He waved his saber and sword and slashed out an overwhelming amount of saber light and sword shadows, forming a huge net with a radius of hundreds of meters that enveloped the heaven and earth. It enveloped Ji Tianqing on the spot. In the originally clear sky, dark clouds appeared out of nowhere and hundreds of dazzling purple thunderbolts appeared. Kaboom! Hundreds of thunderbolts, carrying the power to destroy everything, fiercely struck down from the sky and blasted towards the White Tiger Sacred Sword. At this moment, Long Yunxiao was stepping on the sky and holding the thunderbolts in his hand. He controlled the saber light and sword shadows that covered the sky as if he had the power to control the heaven and earth. He was as majestic as a god. Everyone in the square looked up at him with deep reverence and worship in their hearts. As a martial artist, who didn't want to become a martial arts powerhouse like him, who could control the heaven and earth and thunderbolts and was as majestic and sacred as a god? In the crowd, Jiku Yener and the Beast King all looked very worried. Their hearts were in their throats as they were nervous for Ji Tianqing. The more than 20 princes in the sky had just witnessed Long Yunxiao's true strength and trump card. They all looked amazed and expectant. At the same time, the saber light, sword net, and thunderbolts all blasted the White Tiger Sacred Sword. Boom! Boom! An extremely violent sound exploded on the monarch platform, causing the entire platform to tremble. The loud sound could be clearly heard in the area with a radius of dozens of miles. At that moment, the Emperor's stage was filled with saber light, sword shadows, and thunderbolts. It became extremely turbid and chaotic. Everyone around the Emperor's stage stared at the situation on the stage with their eyes wide open, looking forward to the result. After 10 breaths of time, the reverberating loud sound gradually dissipated. The saber light, sword shadows, and thunderbolts also finally disappeared. Ji Tianqing and Long Yunxiao's figures appeared. They were standing on both sides of the Emperor stage, safe and sound. They looked at each other from hundreds of meters away. Long Yunxiao's ultimate move was indeed powerful. It had defeated Ji Tianqing's White Tiger Sacred Sword on the spot. However, Ji Tianqing's defense was also very strong. He was not injured by the saber light, sword net, and thunderbolts. He just looked a little pale, his blood and qi were not flowing smoothly, and his true essence was a little shaken. Long Yunxiao frowned and stared at him. After a moment of silence he said, "If this monarch remembers correctly, you seem to have only mastered the power of metal and fire. Your first move just now actually used the power of ice. Moreover, this monarch's 2 ultimate moves were blocked by you. Ji Tianqing, have you broken through the shackles and reached the Sky Origin stage?" His tone was dignified and solemn. There was a trace of disbelief in it. Ji Tianqing didn't hide it. He calmly nodded and said, "That's right. Just yesterday." After saying that, his whole body burst out with an incomparably powerful aura. It was as if he could communicate with the heaven and earth and master all things of the 5 elements. That was the aura that only a Sky Origin stage powerhouse could have. Long Yunxiao's face suddenly changed. His eyes flashed with a touch of astonishment. After a moment, he came back to his senses and revealed a face full of smiles. "In just 2 or 3 months, you actually broke through the shackles and reached the Sky Origin stage. Very good." Chapter 521. For a genius like Long Yunxiao, he was never afraid of his opponent's strength. Ordinary warriors were not qualified to be his opponent. Only monstrous geniuses were worthy of his attention. The stronger the opponent's talent and strength, the more it could stimulate his fighting spirit. Ji Tianqing stared at him with a confident smile on his face. He said in a sonorous tone, "You see me as a strong opponent, but unfortunately, you are not my opponent. Take this." He suddenly shouted angrily. His body once again ignited with monstrous crimson flames. His body and the flames merged to form a 20-meter-long giant flaming sword. Vermilion Bird's Sacred Sword. The powerful giant flaming sword streaked across the sky like a meteor and slashed toward Long Yunxiao. The crimson flames on the giant sword condensed into a majestic vermilion bird phantom. The vermilion bird's sacred beast extended its claws and pointed its long and sharp beak. It dived down from the sky, emitting an incomparably sacred and violent aura. At that moment, an unparalleled heat enveloped the entire monarch stage. The air was distorted by the high temperature and rippled like water. The vermilion bird's sacred sword descended from the sky and immediately covered Long Yunxiao's figure. At the critical moment, Long Yunxiao waved his sword with all his might. He slashed out dozens of sword shadows to block the vermilion bird's sacred sword's attack. Boom, boom, boom. The vermilion bird's sacred sword collided with the sword shadows in the sky, creating a deafening explosion. The crimson flames spread out and engulfed the entire monarch stage. The dozens of sword shadows were also shattered by the vermilion bird's sacred sword and splashed in all directions. The fragments of the saber light and sword light hit the monarch stage, creating countless pits and cracks on the ground. In the end, Long Yunxiao was still unable to block the vermilion bird's sacred sword's attack. With a muffled bang, he was sent flying by the vermilion bird's sacred sword and slammed into the strange beast statue at the edge of the altar. The tall and majestic black stone statue trembled uncontrollably from the impact, emitting a dull buzzing sound. Long Yunxiao rolled and fell to the ground. The god of war armor he was wearing was damaged. There was a dent in his chest and it seemed like it was about to break. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and flew into the air in a flash. The vermilion bird's sacred sword had already dissipated, and Ji Tianqing's figure also appeared, standing in the center of the monarch stage. He didn't give Long Yunxiao a chance to counterattack and used an even more terrifying skill. He slowly raised his left arm, which was as red as fire and seemed to be condensed from lava, and fiercely slapped at Long Yunxiao, who was in midair. Burning Sky Palm. As he roared, a giant flaming palm with a radius of 100 meters suddenly appeared. It carried a violent power that could destroy the world and went straight for Long Yunxiao. The entire monarch stage was filled with flames. The high temperature seemed to have ignited the air. It was as if a scorching sun had appeared out of nowhere in the originally clear sky. Half of the sky was illuminated with a blood-red hue. Long Yunxiao's pupils shrank as he sensed the terrifying power contained within the giant flaming palm. A look of dread appeared on his face. Without a doubt, the power of this flaming palm was enough to threaten his life. However, his aura was locked on by the giant flaming palm, so he couldn't escape or dodge. At this critical moment, he could only use his secret technique with all his strength to resist the attack of the giant flaming palm. Celestial Shield. The true essence in Long Yunxiao's body surged out like a flood and condensed into a 5-colored light wall in front of him. Although this 5-meter-long and 5-meter-wide spiritual light wall looked only 3 fingers thick, it was formed by his secret technique and had a very strong defense. Just as he condensed the celestial shield, the giant flaming palm had already arrived and slapped the celestial shield. Bang! In the deafening sound, the celestial shield only lasted for a moment before it was smashed into pieces and exploded. However, the giant flaming palm slapped Long Yunxiao and wrapped him up, flying into the sky. Hundreds of meters behind him was the monarch stage's defensive array, the 5-colored light barrier that covered the sky. Boom! The giant flaming palm wrapped around Long Yunxiao and hit the 5-colored light barrier with a destructive force. Suddenly, there was a loud sound that shook the sky. At that moment, the 5-colored light barrier that covered the entire monarch stage began to tremble violently, creating layers upon layers of ripples. In the square with a radius of 10 miles, the hundreds of thousands of people and martial artists were dizzy and their ears were buzzing. The majestic and dignified monarch stage was also shaken to the point of shaking non-stop, and cracks appeared on the ground. The giant flaming palm's power was enough to destroy a 10,000-foot mountain, but it was blocked by the defensive array and exploded into a sea of red fire. The endless sea of red fire turned the entire monarch stage into a sea of fire. Long Yunxiao's figure was also drowned in the sea of red fire and couldn't be seen for a long time. Such an earth-shattering commotion caused the 100,000 people present to be inexplicably shocked. Their faces were filled with astonishment. Countless people looked at the monarch stage in astonishment and exclaimed in disbelief. "Oh my God! Is this the power of a heaven origin expert? The power of that giant flaming palm is too terrifying." Fortunately, there is a defensive array on the monarch stage. Otherwise, that giant flaming palm would have destroyed everything within a radius of 10 miles. I wonder if the Son of Heaven can block such a powerful giant flaming palm. We underestimated that Ji Tianxing too much before. This person is so powerful. No wonder he dares to challenge the Son of Heaven. It's over. I'm afraid the outcome has been decided. The Son of Heaven is going to be defeated. No. The Son of Heaven is the heir of the imperial court. How noble is his status and talent. He is the #1 genius of the human race. How can he be defeated? Not only were the people on the square shocked, but even the more than 20 princes in the sky were also surprised. Even the strongest and arrogant Murong Lingfeng and Duanmu Yulong looked at Ji Tianxing in a new light. The joy and anticipation in their eyes grew even stronger. This Ji Tianxing is indeed extraordinary. There is a high chance that he can defeat Long Yunxiao. Humph. If Ji Tianxing can really defeat Long Yunxiao, I want to see how Long Yunxiao will deal with this. How will he have the face to choose a heavenly concubine? In the lofty pagoda on the south side of the square, the emperor and the imperial tutor had been watching the battle closely. Their expressions had become a little serious. The imperial tutor sighed faintly. I didn't expect that our race would have a genius who can stand shoulder to shoulder with the Son of Heaven. If this person didn't challenge the Son of Heaven, it would be a blessing for our race. It's a pity that this is the first time this person has shown his talent in front of the world. He actually wants to use the Son of Heaven to make a name for himself. The emperor frowned slightly and said in a serious tone, based on the strength that this person has shown, he is not any weaker than Yunxiao. I'm afraid it will be difficult for Yunxiao to win today. There are a total of 6 chapters today. There will be another 3 chapters at around 14 p.m. Brothers, please wait patiently. Thank you for your understanding. Chapter 522. After a long time, the boundless sea of fire on the monarch stage dissipated. Long Yunzhao's figure appeared. He was still standing tall and straight on the stage. But his appearance was somewhat miserable. The golden robe he wore had a few charred holes and his wide sleeves were rolled up. Moreover, the god of war armor he was wearing was gone. When the heaven-burning palm shattered the celestial barrier, it completely shattered his god of war armor and turned it into metal fragments. Fortunately, the celestial barrier and the god of war armor offset 50% of the power of the heaven-burning palm, so he was not seriously injured. He held the dragon teeth blade in his left hand and the nine-cloud sword in his right hand. He looked at Ji Tianqing expressionlessly. His face was somewhat pale and there were traces of blood at the corner of his mouth. Ji Tianqing stood calmly in the middle of the field, his eyes fixed on Long Yunzhao. His expression was indifferent as he said in a firm tone, "Long Yunzhao, I will definitely win this battle." Long Yunzhao did not refute. He only revealed a smile and said in a playful tone, "That's right. After all, if you don't win, you will die. You have no way out. You must fight to the death." Ji Tianqing frowned, gazing at Long Yunzhao, but didn't say anything. Long Yunzhao was right. He had no way out. He could only win at all costs. If he won, his future would be bright. He would be famous and enter the monarch palace. He would make Long Yunzhao voluntarily withdraw and obtain Madame Yun's approval. If he lost, he would die. Long Yunzhao raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, "Ji Tianqing, although your heaven-burning palm is very powerful, it is far from enough. If you want to defeat this monarch, you have to take out all your trump cards and burst out all your potential." He shouted in a sonorous tone. His body turned into a colorful stream of light and rushed into the sky. 8 steps of wind and thunder. Long Yunzhao shouted in a low voice. His feet moved in a mysterious way as he shuttled back and forth in the sky. Every time he took a step in the empty sky, an invisible and mysterious power would burst forth from him. After he finished his 8 steps, an array diagram that covered the sky appeared out of nowhere in the empty sky. The array diagram, which was several hundred meters wide, was made up of tens of thousands of black and gray lines, showing the vast sky. Inside the formation diagram, wind and clouds surged, thunder rumbled, and lightning flashed. It displayed the mighty might of the heavens and emitted an incomparably majestic aura. Long Yunzhao stood in the air above the wind and thunder array. His left hand held the dragon teeth blade and pointed at Ji Tianqing. Surge of wind and thunder. Instantly, the wind and clouds in the wind and thunder array diagram surged violently, and thunder surged. More than 10 Zedian thunderbolts, as thick as buckets, burst forth and fiercely struck down. Boom! Zedian lightning descended from the sky, carrying with it an incomparably ferocious and overbearing power as it blasted toward Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing's expression immediately changed, and he immediately retreated 100 meters away. Pang pang pang! More than 10 thunderbolts blasted out more than 10 deep scorched pits on the stone floor, and gravel splashed everywhere. Ji Tianqing had just stopped, and he didn't have time to launch a counterattack. However, Long Yunzhao was already prepared. He held the 9-cloud sword in his right hand, pointed at him again, and shouted in a low voice, 10,000 thunderbolts! Suddenly, electric snakes danced wildly in the wind and thunder array diagram, and dazzling thunderbolts burst out. Thousands of thunderbolts enveloped the entire emperor stage, and like a rain of arrows, they poured down and fiercely struck toward Ji Tianqing. This time, Ji Tianqing had nowhere to hide. He could only open his golden wings and wrap himself up. Pang 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 pang! Countless thunderbolts fell down like raindrops, continuously bombarding the golden wings, and burst out a series of muffled sounds. Ji Tianqing's entire body was submerged in the thunderbolts. His body was constantly trembling, and he was constantly pushed back. Thousands of thunderbolts bombarded him like a dense rain, and he could only resist, and he was simply unable to counterattack. Thunderbolts were more violent than flames. They represented the divine might of heaven, and no one could block them. At this moment, Long Yunzhao stood proudly in the sky, stepping on the wind and thunder array diagram. He held a saber and sword in his hand, and he controlled the thunderbolts. He was truly divine and mighty to the extreme. He controlled the wind, the clouds, and the thunderbolts, just like the gods in the legends who controlled the wind, rain, thunder, and lightning. The 100,000 martial artists in the square found it incredible, and they were full of reverence and worship for him. The more than 20 princes in the sky were also surprised, and their eyes were full of splendor. Long Yuanshao had only been in the emperor residence for 2 years, and he rarely had the chance to fight. It was even more impossible for him to use all his trump cards. Many of the princes didn't know his true strength, and they didn't know his trump cards and ultimate skills. Now the crowd had witnessed this wonderful peak battle with their own eyes, and only then did they see Long Yuanzhao's terrifying means. For a moment, many of the princes who were stronger than him were also a little wary of him. Ji Tianqing kept retreating, and everywhere he passed, he was enveloped by thunderbolts. Charred pits were blasted out on the ground, and debris flew everywhere. Finally, he retreated to the edge of the emperor stage, and there was no place for him to retreat. However, the thunderbolts in the sky were still as dense as rain, and they didn't stop. The wind and thunder array diagram could absorb the power of heaven and earth within a radius of 100 miles, and it could continuously produce thunderbolts. Ji Tianqing could withstand it for a while, but he couldn't withstand it forever. At most, he would exhaust his true essence in 15 minutes, and he wouldn't be able to support the power of the golden wings. At that time, he would be turned into charcoal by the thunderbolts in the sky. No, I can't just block it. I have to counterattack. Long Yuanshao relies on the wind and thunder array diagram. As long as the wind and thunder array diagram is still there, he can control the power of heaven and earth's thunderbolts. Only by destroying the wind and thunder array diagram can I break his ultimate skill. Ji Tianqing thought to himself, and he instantly made up his mind. He leaned against the edge of the emperor stage and used the golden wings to protect himself. He urged the sword embryo in his abdomen to fly out of his body. Sword of Judgment. The sword embryo transformed into a huge golden sword that was 20 meters long. It lit up with a dazzling golden light, and a pair of golden light wings condensed. Swish! The golden sacred sword contained an indestructible and unstoppable power. Under the control of Ji Tianqing, the golden sacred sword penetrated the blockade of the thunderbolts in the sky, and brazenly attacked the wind and thunder array diagram in the sky. Boom! In the deafening loud noise, the sword of judgment ruthlessly stabbed the wind and thunder array diagram, and purple thunderbolts that covered the sky burst out. The wind and thunder array diagram wasn't a physical object, but a phantom array formed by Long Yuanzhao's array Dao. The sword of judgment was a huge sword that contained 30% of Ji Tianqing's power, and its power was terrifyingly powerful. The sword of judgment immediately pierced a huge hole in the wind and thunder array diagram, which was hundreds of meters in radius, and shattered into black clouds and thunderbolts. The wind and thunder array diagram collapsed and shattered. Chapter 523. Long Yuanshao did not have the protection of the divine war armor. When he was stabbed by the golden sacred sword, he spat out a mouthful of blood and was severely injured. He crashed into the 5-colored light barrier. His body was trembling from the impact, and his consciousness was a little blurry. He fell from the sky powerlessly. A huge wound appeared on his chest, and blood kept spilling out. At this time, the golden sacred sword flew high into the sky, and it emitted a dazzling golden light. Under Ji Tianqing's control, the golden sacred sword was like a whirlpool, crazily swallowing the spiritual energy from all directions. Within a radius of 10 miles, all the spiritual qi of heaven and earth gathered and turned into strands of 5-colored spiritual light, surging into the golden sacred sword. Suddenly, the golden sacred sword grew 10 meters in size, and its power increased by 50%. The sword intent it emitted was even more violent and fierce. Ji Tianqing stood proudly on the monarch stage, looking up at the golden sacred sword in the sky. He let out a powerful and domineering roar. Sword, come! Suddenly, the golden sacred sword suspended in the sky locked onto Long Yuanzhao's aura. It carried an aura that could suppress everything and slammed down from the sky. Slash! The golden sacred sword carried a golden flame tail. It was faster than lightning, and it instantly hit Long Yuanshao. Long Yuanshao was already injured by the golden sacred sword. He fell from the sky, and before he could block or dodge, his body was engulfed by the golden flame. Boom! In an earth-shattering explosion, The golden sacred sword wrapped around Long Yunxiao and slammed into the ground of the monarch stage. The entire monarch stage shook violently, and it trembled continuously for dozens of times. A huge crater with a radius of dozens of meters was formed on the hard rock ground, and gravel flew everywhere. The dazzling golden light mixed with the violent airwaves, forming a golden shockwave. It spread out in all directions and crashed into the five-colored light barrier. The five-colored light barrier kept shaking, and layers of ripples appeared. It was even more dazzling and colorful. The golden light covered the sky, and it filled hundreds of meters of space. It drowned the entire monarch stage, and it didn't dissipate for a long time. The loud explosion was still echoing in the sky, and it gradually faded away. After about 100 breaths of time, the monarch stage calmed down, and the vision became clear again. Ji Tianqing stood on the monarch stage, his body as straight as a sword. However, his countenance was slightly pale, and the white robe he wore had already been charred black. It was tattered, and he seemed to be in a sorry state. Moreover, he had repeatedly used his ultimate skills and trump cards. More than half of his true essence had been consumed. He only had about 30% left. 100 meters in front of him, there was a huge crater in the ground, with cracks extending all around it. At the bottom of the deep pit, Long Yunxiao was lying in the ruins covered in blood. He was slowly struggling to get up. There were several large wounds on his left shoulder, chest, and back. The wound was badly mangled and dark red blood gushed out ceaselessly. It was even to the extent that the bones within could be faintly seen. Even though he was severely injured, he did not lose consciousness and remained conscious. He broke free from the rubble and slowly stood up. He condensed a pair of wings with his true essence and flew out of the huge pit. Shwa! Long Yunxiao landed on the edge of the crater and staggered a few steps before he could steady himself. He held the dragon teeth blade and the nine-cloud sword in his hands. His body was slightly bent as he stood on the monarch stage. At this point, he was already an arrow at the end of its flight and could not fight anymore. There was no doubt that Long Yunxiao had been defeated. The commoners in the square were all dumbfounded when they saw Long Yunxiao's severely injured appearance. When the crowd came to their senses, they immediately burst into discussions and exclamations. "This is unbelievable! Ji Tianqing actually has such terrifying strength. There is actually such a marvelous swordsmanship in this world. Today I have learned something new. It's over. The Son of Heaven is severely injured. He has already lost. The outcome has been decided. I never thought that the result would be so unbelievable. A nameless boy can actually defeat the #1 genius of the human race. The human race is really full of geniuses. That guy called Ji Tianqing not only passed the Monarch Mansion's assessment, but also obtained the title of the #1 genius of the human race. He is simply too monstrous. This is too shocking. I haven't seen such a thrilling and wonderful battle for more than 10 years. From today onwards, Ji Tianqing's name will spread throughout Middle Ground and become famous throughout the world. The human race has one more top genius. The Monarch Mansion will also have a new noble prince. The more than 20 princes in the sky were also shocked and in disbelief. That guy, Ji Tianqing, is actually able to display such a miraculous sword technique? This person is a formidable opponent. When he enters the Monarch Mansion, we must be careful of him. Based on Ji Tianqing's performance just now, in time, he will definitely become an influential figure in the Monarch Mansion. Murong Lingfeng and Duanmu Yulong looked at each other across the sky and smiled meaningfully. They exchanged a few words through their spiritual senses. Ji Tianqing has actually defeated Long Yunxiao. Hee. I'm afraid that there will be a more exciting show later. This is good news for us. When Ji Tianqing enters the Monarch Mansion, we will make another plan. In the pagoda to the south of the square, the monarch emperor frowned and looked a little serious. The imperial tutor stroked his white beard and shook his head with a sigh. As the monarch emperor expected, Ji Tianqing has really defeated the Son of Heaven. The Son of Heaven's reputation has been damaged and he has been seriously injured. How will he choose his heavenly concubine later? The monarch emperor was silent for a moment and then ordered in a deep voice. Imperial tutor, pass down the order to carefully investigate that boy called Ji Tianqing. This boy's talent and strength have surpassed Yunxiao. I want to see what kind of background he has. On the monarch stage, Ji Tianxing and Long Yunxiao looked at each other and ignored the reactions and discussions of the crowd. Long Yunxiao endured his injuries and tried his best to straighten his body. He stared at Ji Tianxing. His expression was very calm. There was no anger or unwillingness after being defeated. Instead, there was a trace of relief in his eyes. Ji Tianxing, you are very good. He chuckled. His voice was a little hoarse and his tone was a little low. Today's battle is the most satisfying battle I've ever had in my life. I have to admit that I have lost. You are indeed qualified to stand by her side. You are worthy of her trust and trust. Congratulations. You are about to become the 56th emperor. I will also fulfill my promise and not pester her anymore. After saying that, Long Yunxiao raised his head and chuckled a few times. He turned around and was about to leave. However, there was a deep sadness and desolation hidden in that pretentious and carefree chuckle. Wait. At this moment, Ji Tianxing shouted softly. Long Yunxiao stopped stumbling and did not turn around. With his back facing him, he asked in a deep voice, "You have already won. What else do you have to say?" Ji Tianxing stared at him with a complicated expression. He had used all his trump cards and strength to finally defeat Long Yunxiao in front of everyone and obtain victory. From now on, he would be the #1 genius of the human race whose name would spread throughout the world. He would also be recognized by the Cloud Spirit Palace and would be able to stay with Yunyao forever. This was supposed to be a joyous occasion, and he should be overjoyed and excited. However, his expression was as calm as usual, without the slightest hint of joy. He stared at Long Yunxiao's back and was silent for a moment before asking, "You sacrificed so much for her, but in the end, you helped me. Was it worth it?" Long Yunxiao's body trembled slightly, but he immediately covered it up. His voice was calm and cold as he said, "I don't understand what you are talking about." After saying that, he walked away without looking back. He condensed a pair of wings with his true essence and flew down the Emperor platform. Chapter 524. With Long Yunxiao's departure, the challenge ended. Divine Master He Yu descended from the sky and landed on the Emperor stage. He looked at Ji Tianxing and nodded his head slightly. Then, he announced the result with a loud voice. "I announce the end of the challenge. Ji Tianxing has passed the test. From today onwards, he will be the 56th prince of the Emperor's residence." Divine Master He Yu's voice spread across a radius of 10 miles. Over 100,000 people could hear him clearly. After announcing the result, Divine Master He Yu looked at Ji Tianxing again and said seriously, "Ji Tianxing, from today onwards, you will be the prince of the Emperor's residence. A month ago, your crime of trespassing into the Emperor's residence will be removed. I will not pursue it any further. From today onwards, your words and actions will represent the Emperor's residence. You must remember that your words and actions will not bring down the prestige of the Emperor's residence. Do not damage the dignity of the Emperor's residence." Ji Tianxing cupped his hands and bowed. He said respectfully, "I will remember Divine Master's teachings." Divine Master He Yu nodded his head and took out a diamond-shaped purple crystal token. He flicked his finger and threw it to Ji Tianxing. "Within a month, you can report to the Emperor's residence at any time after you have settled your affairs. At that time, I will arrange the cave residence and spiritual vein for you." Ji Tianxing accepted the purple crystal token and thanked Divine Master He Yu again. Divine Master He Yu did not say anything else. He slowly lifted his right foot and stomped on the ground. Suddenly, a formless, majestic energy surged into the ground and spread out, covering the entire Emperor stage. Ji Tianxing immediately saw that the devastated ground under his feet was quickly changing. Under the restoration of the formless energy, the densely packed pits were smoothed out. Countless cracks and ravines of different sizes were quickly healed. After a few breaths, the ground of the Emperor stage was restored to its original state. It was intact as if nothing had happened. After doing all this, Divine Master He Yu waved his sleeve and removed the defensive array that covered the Emperor stage. Then, he flew into the sky and transformed into a pair of huge black wings of light, flying towards the forest of divine monuments. Ji Tianxing watched as God Teacher He Yu disappeared into the horizon. He then turned around and left the monarch stage, flying back to the crowd below the stage. Below the Emperor stage, countless martial artists and commoners were still immersed in great shock, discussing endlessly. Within a radius of 10 miles, there was a boiling cauldron of voices. The rolling waves of voices were like the eruption of a mountain torrent, deafening the ears. In the crowd, Jiku Yener and the Beast King were all filled with excitement and couldn't help but cheer. After all, the Beast King was a Heaven Yuan cultivator and a senior. Naturally, he would not cheer. However, his face was filled with a gratified smile as he stroked his beard and nodded in admiration. Great! Tianqing, this kid, had finally made a name for himself, his name shaking the central state. In a moment, this old man will write a letter to Chu Tianqing. If that old man hears the news, he will be overjoyed. Yen was so excited that his little face flushed red. His eyes sparkled with a bright light. Haha, that's great. Senior brother Tianqing has finally won. He will be reunited with senior sister very soon. Jiku was the most gratified and excited. She was so happy that she cried. She couldn't help but say, I knew that brother Tianqing would definitely win. No matter what danger there is, no matter how strong the opponent is, he will not be defeated. She knew that Ji Tianqing could only win and not lose. Otherwise, he would lose everything and be executed by the monarch mansion. Today, Ji Tianqing had finally defeated Long Yunxiao and won. This was the change from hell to heaven. How could she not be happy for Ji Tianqing? At this moment, Ji Tianqing flew back to the three of them and landed in front of Jiku. Jiku immediately said excitedly, Brother Tianqing, you finally won. That's great. Are you hurt? Do you want to meditate? Ji Tianqing smiled and shook his head. He said gently, I'm fine. You don't have to worry. I defeated Tianzi and passed the test. You should be happy. Why are you crying? As he spoke, he reached out to help Jiku wipe away the tears from the corner of her eyes. Yen hurriedly came over and said with a smile, Senior brother Tianqing, junior sister Jiku is so happy that she's crying. Senior brother, you don't know. When you were fighting with Tianzi on the stage just now, junior sister was so nervous that she almost suffocated. She had been praying for you. Jiku suddenly felt a little embarrassed. She pretended to be angry and glared at Yen. Ji Tianqing patted Yen's shoulder and asked with a smile. Then when senior brother challenged Tianzi on the stage, weren't you nervous? Yen shook her head and said with a smile, I wasn't worried because I know that senior brother is the most powerful. I have confidence in you. Back then, even the unparalleled demon emperor who broke the seal was seriously injured by you and almost killed on the spot. Although Tianzi is the #1 genius of the human race, he's far from being as abnormal as you, senior brother. Abnormal? Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and reached out to knock her little head. Is there anyone who praises people like you? The Beast King squeezed over with a smile and said with relief, Tianqing, now that you've defeated Tianzi, you're the #1 genius of the human race. With your monstrous talent, after entering the monarch mansion, you'll definitely grow rapidly and soon become a famous figure in the Tianxian continent. If your master learns of this good news, he'll be so happy that he'll drink 300 cups of wine and get drunk. Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and nodded with a smile. Yes, not only my master, but old Master Xiang will also be overjoyed. He'll definitely get drunk. The four of them discussed happily and laughed heartily from time to time. They were all in a good mood. In a palace on the south side of the square, a burly man in a black robe and a cloak was standing by the window of a room, staring at the square outside. The large cloak covered his head and face, making it difficult to see his appearance. However, this person was tall and straight, exuding a noble and dignified aura. It was obvious that his identity was extraordinary. Humph. Long Yunxiao, that trash, actually lost to a nameless kid in front of everyone. He's really a disgrace to the imperial court. I really don't know why the old man was so blind to make that trash Long Yunxiao the heir. The man in the black robe cursed in a low voice. His tone was filled with hatred. He looked below the monarch stage and stared at Ji Tianqing in the crowd. He whispered in a cold voice, Gao Yi, that useless trash, not only did he mess things up, he even let Ji Tianqing live until now. This little bastard ruined my plan. He's unforgivable and deserves to die. I was just about to go to the Tianqian region to find you, but I didn't expect you to come to the central state and deliver yourself to me. Humph. So what if you enter the monarch mansion? You dare to ruin my plan and block my path. I'll make sure you die without a burial place. The man in the black robe snorted coldly and turned to leave with a cold, murderous intent. Chapter 525. Although the battle between Ji Tianqing and the Son of Heaven had already ended, but the hundreds of thousands of people and martial artists in the square still refused to leave and were still looking forward to it. After all, today was not only the day when Ji Tianqing challenged the Son of Heaven, but it was also the day when the Son of Heaven chose his heavenly concubine. Countless people wanted to see which woman could get the Son of Heaven's favor and become the noble heavenly concubine. However, a quarter of an hour passed quickly. The people were anxiously waiting, but there was still no movement on the emperor stage. No one from the imperial court went up the stage. Only the red lanterns and red silk brocade danced in the wind. The people were a little anxious and began to whisper to each other. Ji Tianqing, Ji Ku, Yan and the Beast King were also waiting patiently in the square. Everyone wanted to know who Long Yunxiao would choose as his heavenly concubine. Would he go back on his word and continue to pester Yunyao? Or would he insist on choosing Yunyao as his heavenly concubine? Ji Tianqing was not in a hurry to return to the Qingfeng courtyard to adjust his breathing. He wanted to see the final result so that he could be completely at ease. However, the Son of Heaven did not appear for a long time, and the people from the imperial court were also nowhere to be seen. Yan was a little anxious and couldn't help but ask Ji Tianqing, "Senior brother Tianqing, how badly did you beat the Son of Heaven?" Ji Tianqing looked at him in confusion. "What's wrong?" Yan frowned and muttered, "He hasn't appeared yet. Could it be that he is seriously injured and unconscious?" Ji Tianqing was startled for a moment and shook his head with a chuckle. With his injuries, he definitely won't. Yan looked up at the empty emperor stage and asked, "Then why hasn't he come out yet? We are still waiting for the result. What if he shamelessly refuses to admit it and chooses senior sister as his heavenly concubine in front of everyone?" Ji Tianqing patted Yan's head and said with a smile, "Don't worry, he won't. He is the dignified Son of Heaven. How can he go back on his word?" As soon as his voice fell, there was a commotion in the crowd in the square, and there was a hubbub of exclamations and discussion. A team of guards in silver armor was protecting two majestic ceremonial officials of the imperial court. They passed through the crowd on the square and walked toward the imperial stage. It wasn't long before the two officials of the imperial court ascended the imperial throne, and they announced a piece of news under the gazes of everyone present. By the order of the imperial court, His Majesty the Emperor is injured today, so it is inconvenient for him to hold a grand ceremony. The date of the selection of the heavenly consort will be postponed. When the ceremonial officer announced the order, many of the commoners began to discuss among themselves, their faces filled with disappointment. However, everyone understood that the Son of Heaven had a great battle with Ji Tianqing and suffered such terrible injuries. Naturally, it was not suitable for him to hold any more ceremonies. Even if the imperial court wanted to delay the selection of the heavenly consort, it was reasonable. No one was surprised. After announcing the imperial court's decree, the ceremonial officer left the emperor stage. The princes in the sky above the monarch stage also looked disappointed and flew away silently. The commoners in the square also gradually dispersed in all directions and began to leave the square. Ji Tianqing, Yan and the others were naturally filled with disappointment as they followed the crowd out of the square. On the south side of the square, in a splendid palace, dozens of palace maids all maintained solemn postures as they stood respectfully around the main hall. At the entrance of the main hall, there were a few guards in golden armor who stood quietly. In the spacious and bright main hall, there were 3 beautiful women who were waiting quietly. These 3 beauties were all stunning in the world. Their figures and appearances were all top-notch, but their temperaments each had their own merits. In the middle of them was a woman in a white dress. Her temperament was as cold as frost, and her eyes were as indifferent as autumn water. She was Yun Yao. She just stood there quietly, and there was a kind of celestial aura around her that made her look down on the world. The beauty in green standing on her left was Suan from the Yong and region's Chengkuan sect. She was the same as Yun Yao, wearing a simple green dress. She didn't put on any makeup, nor did she wear any jewelry. But even so, she had an innate noble and demure temperament. Even if she just stood there with an indifferent expression, she was like an orchid in an empty valley, quiet and leisurely, noble and elegant. Of course, compared to Yun Yao, Suan's temperament was slightly different. She had a bit more earthly aura. Yun Yao was a cold fairy from the 9 heavens, while Xuan was a peerless beauty in the world. As for the third beauty, her name was Lan Huixin. Not only was she pure and beautiful, she had also specially dressed up. She wore an extremely gorgeous floor-length dress and dazzling accessories. Even if she was standing in the main hall waiting, she tried her best to maintain a perfect appearance and a dignified posture. She would not do anything that would affect her image. However, her eyes that seemed as gentle as water on the surface hid a deep sense of urgency and anticipation. Her eyes kept inadvertently glancing at the entrance of the main hall. Obviously, she was anxious and puzzled. Why hadn't the emperor sent someone to announce the decree? Why hadn't the ceremony been held yet? She had prepared and practiced for a few months for this day. Finally, the 2 ceremonial officials arrived late and stepped into the main hall with steady steps. The 2 of them walked to the front of the main hall and looked at the 3 beauties calmly. They said in a dignified tone, "3 beauties. His Majesty the Emperor is injured today and is recuperating in the palace. It is inconvenient to hold the ceremony. The imperial court has ordered that the selection of the heavenly consort will be temporarily postponed. The specific time is still to be discussed. During this time, we ask the 3 beauties to move to the Purple Thunder Palace and stay in His Majesty the Emperor's palace for the time being. Wait patiently." After hearing the ceremonial official's announcement, the 3 beauties' expressions changed slightly and revealed complicated expressions. When Yun Yao heard this, she guessed the result of the battle between Ji Tianqing and the emperor. Her eyes flashed with relief and she secretly sighed in relief. And Xuan's expression seemed calm, but a hint of worry flashed in her eyes. A few years ago, she was fortunate enough to enter the imperial court with her father and participate in the emperor's coming-of-age ceremony. It was also at that banquet that she first met Long Yunxiao. At that time, she had just experienced her first awakening of love and had never been moved by any man. Although there were many celebrities and noble families at the banquet that day, there were many elegant young masters and young masters of noble families. However, when Xuan saw Long Yunxiao for the first time, she was attracted by his cold and dignified eyes that hid a sense of loneliness. From that day onwards, Long Yunxiao entered her heart and had firmly occupied her heart all these years. Originally, she was about to see Long Yunxiao, whom she had been separated from for a long time. However, she didn't expect Long Yunxiao to be seriously injured and unable to choose a heavenly consort. Her heart was filled with worry and anxiety. She only wanted to get to Long Yunxiao's side as soon as possible and see how his injuries were and whether they were critical. Lan Huixin, who was dressed to the nines, revealed a look of disappointment. In order to perform well today and win the emperor's heart, she had carefully prepared for a few months. It could be said that she had put in a lot of effort. However, in the end it was all in vain. How could she not be depressed? Chapter 526. Not long after, the 3 beauties left the main hall. And Xuan and Lan Huixin followed the ceremonial officials and palace maids to the emperor's temporary residence. Yun Yao left alone. She didn't go to the Purple Thunder Palace but went straight to the Clear Wind Courtyard in the Fish Dragon Alley. She knew that Long Yunxiao was strong and had many trump cards. Moreover, he had mastered many secret techniques and was very powerful. Even if Ji Tianqing could defeat Long Yunxiao and severely injure him, he would also be injured. Yun Yao was worried and wanted to go to the Clear Wind Courtyard to visit Ji Tianqing and see how he was doing. The streets outside the palace were bustling with people. Countless people had just left the plaza and were walking in groups of 3 to 5 on the streets. They were discussing the previous battle as they walked. Many people were still immersed in the wonderful and earth-shattering battle. They couldn't help but exclaim loudly when the discussion reached a certain point. Yun Yao passed through the streets and rushed to the Fish Dragon Alley without leaving a trace. She heard countless people's discussions along the way, and combined their words together to understand the course of the battle. When she heard that Ji Tianqing and Long Yunxiao had fought with all their strength and used all their trump cards, her mood also fluctuated. At this moment, she only wanted to reach the Clear Wind Courtyard as soon as possible. However, just as she passed through a small alley and was about to enter another street, she was stopped by a woman in a black dress. The woman in black was tall and thin. Her appearance was ordinary, but she faintly exuded the aura of a powerhouse. Yun Yao was no stranger to her. She recognized her at a glance. This was the personal bodyguard of her mother, Bailey Ningsu, Yun Luo. Yun Luo's surname wasn't Yun. She was only a servant of the Yun family. It was only because she was smart and vigilant in her actions and was loyal to the Yun family. She once saved her mother at the cost of being seriously injured and on the verge of death that she was recognized and valued by the Yun family. Since then, she was given the surname Yun by the Yun family and became her mother's trusted bodyguard. Yun Luo stopped in front of Yun Yao and bowed. "Young miss, please wait." Yun Yao stopped and looked at her with a slight frown. "Why are you stopping me?" Yun Luo looked at the street behind her vigilantly and pulled Yun Yao into an alley. She stretched out her hand and shot out a 5-colored spiritual light, setting up a soundproof array formation to protect herself and Yun Yao. "Then," she said seriously, "eldest young miss, this subordinate is here on Madam's orders to pass on a few words to you." "Mother ordered you to pass on a message?" Yun Yao frowned and thought for a moment. "Then," she said calmly, "then tell me." Yun Luo also did not beat around the bush and said straightforwardly, "Eldest miss, just now, Ji Tianqing and the Son of Heaven had a decisive battle on the monarch stage. Madam secretly watched the entire process." The madam admitted that she had indeed misjudged him. She did not expect Ji Tianqing to have such hidden strength and means. Ji Tianqing was actually able to defeat the Son of Heaven and successfully pass the monarch mansion's examination. This made her feel very surprised. Yun Yao nodded slightly and said indifferently, "Mother does not understand Tianqing. It is normal for her to misjudge him. However, she should have seen Tianqing's aptitude and potential now." Yun Luo did not respond. She did not comment on this and continued, "Madam said that Ji Tianqing defeated the Son of Heaven after all. Today, hundreds of thousands of people witnessed it with their own eyes. This matter has already caused a sensation in Central State City. It will definitely spread quickly. Now that Ji Tianqing has become famous in this battle, he is in the limelight. He will definitely become an influential figure in Central State City. He will definitely attract the attention of countless experts and powers. He is at the heart of the struggle and the Son of Heaven has yet to choose his heavenly concubine. Eldest miss, you are still one of the candidates. If eldest miss goes to Ji Tianqing at this time, some people will definitely find out about this. It will also attract criticism from others, bringing unnecessary trouble to you and Ji Tianqing. Eldest miss, please reconsider." After Yun Luo finished relaying Bailey Ningsu's words, he did not say anything else. He silently waited for Yun Yao to make her decision. Yun Yao frowned as she pondered with a solemn expression. Mother's words are reasonable. Today, Tianqing defeated Long Yunshao on the stage and became famous. He has already become a proud Son of Heaven that everyone looks at. If I go to Clear Wind Courtyard to look for him now, it will be a bit rash. When Tianqing fought with Long Yunshao, the people from the other two families will definitely come to watch. They will definitely keep an eye on Tianqing. If they find out that I went to look for Tianqing, it will give them an opportunity. They will definitely use this opportunity to slander and deal with Cloud Soul Palace. Tianqing has just come to Central State and has not established himself yet. It is not suitable for him to be involved in the grievances of the three great families. Thinking of this, Yun Yao dispelled her previous thoughts. She suppressed the worry in her heart and decided not to visit Ji Tianqing for now. Once the consort selection was over, she would no longer be a heavenly consort candidate, and it would be convenient for her to move. In any case, Ji Tianqing would enter the Monarch Palace soon. At that time, she and Ji Tianqing would both be in the Monarch Palace and there would be plenty of opportunities to meet.